Chapter 861. Evidently, the great king was unaware of this situation. He was startled for a moment before replying with a chuckle, "Marquis of Jiayuan, we have never heard you mention that your main family is the capital's Qiao family." Qiao Zhongbang stood up with a trace of anger between his brows. Unfortunately, before he could speak, Qiao Dongbua snatched the thread of conversation. Precisely. We can't write two Qiao characters in one stroke. Previously, because the servants were incompetent, the Marquis misunderstood the main family. Actually, the Qiao family's main family very much welcomes the Marquis's family's return. With the Crown Princess's cultivation and strength, she doesn't need to participate in the clan competition and can immediately enter the clan's martial arts hall to study. After the Lantern Festival, we hope the Crown Princess can represent our Qiao family in battle. Qiao Dongbua's face blossomed into a chrysanthemum-like smile, causing all the wrinkles on his face to sway. Qiao Zhongbang snorted before turning to the Great King and cupping his hands. Reporting to the Great King, this subject was merely a farmer in the past and has already severed ties with the Qiao family's main family for more than a decade. Now that family head Qiao is bringing up this old matter again, it is unavoidably as if you are trying to claim kinship. Qiao Dongbua's face twitched, and he couldn't resist retorting angrily, "How can blood ties be severed so easily? You will be old Qiaos for one day. You will be old Qiaos for the rest of your lives. Shameless old thing. Duan you harumphed." Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that this black-hearted patriarch of the old Qiao family clearly wanted to bring their family's JoJo back because of her astonishing talent. Participate in the competition? He really dared to say such a thing. He was truly shameless. Arbor looked on coldly from the sidelines and didn't say a word. He held her small soup bowl and drank the meat soup spoonful by spoonful. Qiao Zhongbang forcefully flung his sleeve. "Family head Qiao. Please conduct yourself with dignity." Qiao Dongbua's face turned green from anger, and he jumped up and shouted angrily, "Eldest nephew, you aren't being kind by doing this." Empress Zhao sat in the great hall with her mouth tightly pursed. She coldly stared at the people of the Qiao estate as a trace of disgust involuntarily crept into her heart. Qiao Dongbua's eldest son, Qiao Zhongde, sneered, "Dad, what do you have to say to this kind of people who forget their ancestry? He's the kind of person who could harden his heart and throw me into a dilapidated temple to be exposed to the wind and rain." Wei Ziqin's heart thumped. Today, all the officials of the third rank and above were gathered, and the 8 great aristocratic families were all present. If this black-hearted Qiao Dongbua really came up with some kind of reputation of forgetting one's ancestry, then who knew what kind of rumors would spread about their family's old Qiao in the capital tomorrow? Sure enough, as soon as Qiao Zhongbang said this, the entire hall was filled with gasps, and the gazes everyone shot at Qiao Zhongbang carried a trace of surprise. After all, in this day and age, even the great king constantly talked about filial piety, and the entire nation advocated filial piety. How could a person who didn't even have the basic filial piety talk about loyalty and righteousness? If they walked on the streets, they would be pointed at and cursed behind their backs. Mo Lian put down the cup in her hand, and her phoenix eyes coldly swept over Qiao Zhongde. "If you're talking about old lady Qiao, then that's a coincidence. This prince can testify that old lady Qiao was the one who made a fuss and insisted on leaving the Marquis's estate with her youngest son and youngest daughter-in-law. What's the problem with this? What's with the dilapidated temple?" Qiao Zhongde's entire body couldn't help but tense up when Mo Lian's cold gaze swept over him. The man in front of him had a trace of terrifying deterrence in his eyes, as if he only needed a cold gaze to kill him by 1,000 cuts. Chapter 862. Yes, death by 1,000 cuts, that's how terrifying it was. Qiao Zhongde's body couldn't help but tremble. He stood up and forced himself to say, "Your Highness, Qiao Zhongde isn't lying. The day before yesterday, my father brought my aunt back from the rundown temple. My aunt was so miserable that she didn't even look human anymore. Anyone with the slightest bit of sympathy wouldn't be able to bear to see her like that, right?" "Oh?" Mo Lian pretended to be puzzled and asked, "This prince was also there that day?" Old Madame Chow cried and made a fuss about leaving with her son and daughter-in-law. So the old madam actually went to stay the night in the rundown temple? Why was that? Fuck. Xiao Zhongde wanted to curse in his heart. Wasn't His Highness clearly trying to shield the family? What do you mean by why? What other reason could there be for staying in a rundown temple? They had no money, no food, no houses, nothing at all. What other reason could there be? Otherwise, why would people stay in a rundown temple when they had a nice big house to live in? That day, my father-in-law and mother-in-law tried their best to persuade the old madam to stay, but the old madam insisted on leaving with her youngest son. Our dear Mo Lian's ability to lie through his teeth gradually deepened, and he shook his head regretfully as he said, "We also had no other choice. We had no choice but to have elderly lady and her youngest son move out to live outside." The whole thing was actually quite simple. The main thing was that the old madam's youngest son was too much of a good-for-nothing. When Prince Mo said this, his entire face became solemn and his expression seemed a bit cold. That couple came knocking on our door that day and insisted that father-in-law hand over the position of marquis and give up the big house. They also wanted mother-in-law to give up the title of nobility to their daughter-in-law. How could they do that? Everyone in the main hall, men and women, old and young, all revealed an incredulous expression. Arbor was sipping his soup and almost choked when he heard this. He lowered his head and silently drank his soup while secretly reaching out to tug at Prince Mo's collar. That's enough. If you continue to argue like this, it'll sound fake. Prince Mo's expression was especially solemn as he stood up and bowed to his imperial father. Imperial father, this son has never seen such a shameless person. They even dragged your father-in-law and mother-in-law into the palace and threatened to have you confer a new title of marquis and madam. The old great king was dumbfounded. Not to mention the great king and the other courtiers, even Xiao Zhongbang and his wife were dumbfounded. Is that so? They were all present that day as well. Had such a strange thing happened before? The couple looked at each other speechlessly. My son-in-law is really good at making up lies. Father, I was so angry that I chased them out in your name. The old great king was speechless. This son of his had never not cheated his father since he was young. He already knew this, but there were so many courtiers and people from the 8 great aristocratic families. Was it really okay for him to cheat his father like this? Imperial father, do you think we should chase away people who disrespected elder brother and the great king? Yes. The old great king nodded. Should we not let them step into the marquis' estate for the rest of their lives? Yes. Yes. The old great king weakly responded. He actually wanted to ask, what did this trivial family matter of old Xiao have to do with him? Many thanks, Imperial Father. Crown Prince Mo straightforwardly curtsied to his old dad before turning to wink at his Xiao Xiao. He then turned to ask Xiao Zhongde, you heard everything, right? Chapter 863. What did he hear? Xiao Zhongde was dumbfounded as he silently looked at the crown prince. It was the great king's intention to chase that heartless and unscrupulous youngest son and daughter-in-law out of the marquis' estate. Did you not understand? Mo Lian swept her gaze over Xiao Zhongde like she was looking at an idiot. Xiao Zhongde silently shut his mouth. As for elderly Lady Xiao, as I said before, she has hands and feet and is a living person herself. Who can stop her from going wherever she wants to? Prince Mo dryly glanced at Xiao Zhongde. As for why they lived in the rundown temple, Mo Lian paused and blinked with a spurious smile. Perhaps it's a personal hobby. Perhaps elderly lady got tired of living in a large house and wanted a change of environment. Pfft. Duan Yu spat out a mouthful of wine. In exchange, he received an irritated glare from Mo Lian. Xiao Zhongde was so infuriated that his eyes, nose, and mouth were practically all crooked. What an outlandish argument. So there were actually people in this world who disliked living in a large house and especially wanted a change of environment to live in a rundown temple that was exposed to the sun and rain? The great king, who habitually supported his son, also coughed softly and nodded. The crown prince's words are not without reason. Reason my ass. Qiao Dongbuo's face was also contorted from anger, and his hands were plastered to the sides of his robe as a sneer hung on his lips. In that case, it really is that punk Qiao Zhongheng and his wife who don't know what's good for them. But Zhongbang ah. Qiao Dongbuo turned his face away and said earnestly, no matter what, even if the bones are broken, the tendons are still connected, especially your mother. You don't know how pitiful she looked that day when we went to the rundown temple to bring your mother out. Exalted great king. Duan Yu suddenly lifted his robe and stood up with cupped hands, interrupting Qiao Dongbuo's words with a smile. Today is the day that the 8 great patrician families are gathered. We didn't come here to listen to family trifles and wails. If family head Qiao really wants to resolve the family's mundane affairs in this audience hall, then why not use us cultivators' methods to resolve conflicts? Mu Boming asked with a smile, fourth young master Duan, I wonder what you're referring to when you say that cultivators use methods to resolve conflicts? Fist. Duan Yu shook his fist and said with a grin, instead of being so wishy-washy, why don't we have a good fight? Qiao Dongbuo's face was dark and gloomy, and he used a terrifying gaze to stare at the handsome youth who had abruptly interrupted him. Just now, he felt that Qiao Zhongbang's eyes had clearly wavered when he heard about old Madame Qiao's tragic situation. He felt that he had a chance of persuading Qiao Zhongbang to return to the Qiao family's ancestral home to see his mother. Unfortunately, this brat who popped out of nowhere suddenly spoiled everything. Family head Qiao, why are you staring at me like this? Do you want to have a match with me? Duan Yu's eager expression made Qiao Dongbuo's teeth ache. He would have to be crazy to compete with this kid. Why would he, the dignified family head of the Qiao family, have a match with a junior from the Duan family? It wouldn't be surprising if he won, but it would be even more humiliating if he lost. He would have to be crazy to compete with this Duan family brat. Duan Yu blinked and looked at Qiao Dongbuo with a disappointed expression. Family head Qiao, you actually don't dare to compete with me. When Qiao Dongbuo heard this, he couldn't help but jump up from his seat, the veins on his head nearly bursting. Brat, speak properly and don't babble nonsense. Grandfather, he's scary. Chapter 864. Duan Yu abruptly turned his head to look at the elderly man in his 60s drinking tea. The elderly man's hair stood on end like steel needles. His eyes were hale and hearty, and his body was robust. His voice was as loud as a bell when he opened his mouth. Slap! The elderly man slapped the teacup under his palm, instantly shattering it into pieces. Qiao Dongbuo shuddered for no reason, and his gaze shrunk slightly. Crap, how did he provoke this difficult old thing? Qiao Dongbuo, you dare to yell at my good grandson? Duan Zhenxing questioned angrily like an enraged lion, about to pounce and rip Qiao Dongbuo's throat apart. Qiao Dongbuo involuntarily retreated a few steps and awkwardly smiled at old Master Duan. Elderly Patriarch Duan, my apologies, my apologies. My attitude earlier was a bit too extreme. Duan Zhenxing harumphed and slapped the table hard, his voice reverberating like a drum. My good grandson wants to compete with you because he thinks highly of you. Why aren't you making a move? Qiao Dongbuo's aged face instantly flushed red. What the fuck did old master mean? He really wanted him to spar with the Duan family's brat. That immature brat from the Duan family was so excited and eager to give it a try. He even started swinging his arms and legs on the spot, looking like a rash youth who had never sparred with anyone before. He looked foolish. If he hit him too hard, old Master Duan would lose face. If he hit him too lightly, he wouldn't be willing. I'll spar with you. Qiao Zhongde abruptly stood up from his side and angrily declared, you don't have the right to spar with my dad. Old Master Duan's aged face darkened at once. He exerted some force in his hand and shattered the short table in front of him with a boom. Punk, who are you saying doesn't have the right? Old Master Duan roared. The great king's eye twitched, and he looked at the queen sitting upright beside him. Queen, did you prepare a few more tables? Seeing that old Master Duan's fiery temper was about to erupt, Xiao Dongbua hastily stopped his son and smiled apologetically. "Old master, my son is insensible." "All right." Duan Yu responded crisply and abruptly stretched out his long legs, directly jumping over the small table to the center of the main hall. He crooked his finger at Xiao Zhongde with a sly smile. "Don't cry if you lose, tortoise. Brat, you're courting death." Without waiting for Xiao Dongbua to stop him, Xiao Zhongde was already like an enraged elephant, furiously stomping on the main hall's stone bricks as he madly dashed toward Duan Yu. His fist, accompanied by an explosive roar, was already in front of Duan Yu's eyes. Some of the more timid daughters of officials had already reached out their hands to cover their eyes. They couldn't bear to see such an elegant and peerless young master being ruthlessly rammed out like a bull. Only a loud boom sound could be heard in his ears. Qiao Mu peeked out of the corner of her eye and saw her eldest uncle from the Qiao clan's main family tumbling several times in the air before being sent flying by a huge force. He crashed ruthlessly out of the main hall, and she reckoned that he would probably smash a shallow hole in the limestone bricks outside the main hall. The great king and Empress Zhao met each other's eyes before silently shifting their gazes to that Duan family's fourth young master. This Duan family's fourth young master abruptly stopped smiling, and his beautiful peach blossom eyes were filled with a thunderous fury. He abruptly turned to shout at old Master Duan, "Grandfather, grandfather! He insulted me. He actually sent a minor level 6 mystic cultivator to spar with me. He insulted me. He's insulting you." Duan Zhenxing, didn't you already know that Xiao Zhongde was a minor level 6 mystic cultivator before the fight? Chapter 865. You clearly wanted to beat him to death, yet you still found an excuse to say that he was insulting you. Even an oddball grandfather like Duan Zhenxing couldn't help blushing from his grandson's shameless words. "Ah, ha ha ha." The great king suddenly let out an awkward laugh. Heroes truly come from the youth. Fourth young master Duan's cultivation is astonishing and very formidable. Today, we have truly broadened our horizons, ha 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 ha. Qiao Zhongde's second brother, Qiao Zhonghao, had already helped his older brother inside the main hall. Qiao Zhongde's face was bruised and swollen from the fall, and he probably lost a few teeth. He was currently leaning on his brother with a dispirited expression and didn't even have the strength to walk on his own. "Zhongde, Zhongde." Qiao Dongbua paled in fright as he called out to his son. He abruptly turned his head and glared at Duan Yu. "You punk, you're too vicious." "What did I do?" Duan Yu glared at Xiao Dongbua in bewilderment. "You just had to send a minor level 6 mystic cultivator to spar with me. I only lightly stretched out a finger, and he was sent flying. Is this my fault?" Everyone was silent. Just now, everyone saw very clearly that fourth young master Duan had really only lifted a finger and poked Xiao Zhongde's fist once. Subsequently, Xiao Zhongde lost control and directly tumbled in the air, wailing miserably as he was flung out of the main hall by a terrifying force. To be precise, he really was sent flying by fourth young master Duan's finger. No wonder your Qiao family is impatient to bring our Jojo home. So it's because the other members of your Qiao family are all weak chickens. Duan Yu mocked. Although what he said was the truth, Qiao Dongbua still flew into a rage out of humiliation. "Do you think I wanted the crown princess to join this competition for our family clan?" Qiao Dongbua retorted angrily, "I did it for the great king and also for our northern Moi. To put it bluntly, the reason our 8 great patrician families are holding this competition is to select 4 outstanding youths under the age of 20. In order to prepare for the decennial mystic beast forest secret realm. Think about it. If the crown prince consort enters the mystic beast forest secret realm as a Qiao clan descendant, even if she doesn't have 100% certainty, she must at least have an 80% certainty that she will be able to obtain 1 or 2 treasures for our Mo kingdom from the secret realm." The great king's eyes lit up. Patriarch Qiao's words are true. The crown princess. Following the great king's call, everyone's gaze once again fell on the crown princess. But what was the crown princess doing? She was still holding the small bowl and eating slowly. She ate the fish slices in vinegar with her chopsticks and braised shark fin with her chopsticks. She was eating alone and seemed to be eating quite happily. The great king's lips twitched as he shot his son a look that said, "You should discipline your wife." Prince Emo was quite happy because his wife ate quite a lot today. Tomorrow, he would definitely reward the chefs in the royal kitchen for making dishes that suited their Jojo's taste. "Jojo, don't choke. Drink some porridge to moisten your throat." Prince Emo handed a bowl of porridge to his wife. When he looked up, he noticed the great king's odd gaze and raised a brow. "What are you guys doing? I'm telling you, don't have any ideas about my Jojo. She's not free." Empress Xiao frowned and said kindly to her darling son, "Crown Prince, there are many treasures in the Mystic Beast Forest secret realm." Chapter 866. The great king showed a rare expression of excitement as he hurriedly nodded. That was the legendary forest mystic realm. This naturally formed mystic realm was rather strange and mysterious. It was said that only youths below the age of 20 and above the age of 13 could enter to search for treasures. If anyone over the age of 20 tried to force their way into the mystic realm, they would be completely exterminated at the entrance. The mystic realm only opened once every 10 years, and each time it opened, it would be open for a month. If one didn't leave the mystic realm in time after a month, they would have to stay in the mystic realm forever. As long as we can retrieve a divine artifact, it can be used as a national treasure. It will be greatly beneficial to the imperial court, Empress Xiao said indifferently. Right. It's said that aside from divine artifacts, there are also divine beasts inside. The great king also said very happily. Xiao Dongbuo's face lit up, and he immediately cupped his hands towards the great king. In that case, the great king has also agreed to let the crown princess participate in this competition as a Qiao family disciple. Great king, rest assured. With the crown princess cultivation and strength, she will naturally be able to stand out in the selection and obtain a precious spot to enter the mystic realm. Other than the 4 contestants selected by the 8 great patrician families, the great king can also select 2 outstanding youths from official families to join the team. Xiao Dongbuo became more and more enthusiastic as he spoke, as if he was about to welcome Arbor back to the Qiao family. Northern Moi had a total of 6 spots for the exploration of the forest mystic realm. Northern Wei and Southern Bailey only had 4 spots. Some of the other small kingdoms in the north and south only had 1 spot, and some of the barren border kingdoms didn't even have a spot. When the other patrician families heard Xiao Dongbuo's words, it seemed to make sense. The stronger the teammates, the higher the chances of obtaining treasures during the exploration. According to the rules, the 6 members of the exploration team had to have their inner worlds scanned when they came out of the mystic realm. At that time, they could only keep 1 treasure, and the rest would have to be handed over to their family clans. Of course, the family still had to pay tribute to the old great king of the Emo kingdom. That was how it was done. Along the way, the young men and women had experienced life and death situations. Even if they risked their lives, they would only be able to obtain a single treasure. In the end, they might even die in the mystic realm. Everyone was excitedly discussing how Arbor returning to the Qiao family was indeed a very beneficial thing for them. The 2 young masters of the Qin estate watched from the side with cold eyes. The young master of the Omega Kotoku even curled up the corners of his mouth, revealing a mocking smile. After Xiao Dongbuo and the others finished their discussion, the old great king made the final decision and happily allowed Arbor to report back to the main family. A happy smile appeared on Xiao Dongbuo's face. Yet it was at this time that Xiaomu raised her head to look at them and abruptly asked, "Hey, were you guys discussing me in full swing just now?" Xiao Dongbuo turned to look at Arbor with a chuckle, a hypocritical and benevolent smile on his aged face. "Of course, we were." Splash! A basin of foot-washing water was taken out from her inner world and directly splashed onto Xiao Dongbuo, who was standing in front of her. Our dear Duanyu, who had long been on guard, had already dodged far away. At this time, only Xiao Dongbuo and his sons were affected by the foot-washing water, as well as a corner of the old great king's lapel. Previously, she used the holy water to soak her feet and saved the foot-washing water. She felt that it was quite wasteful to splash it like this. Look, didn't this benefit Xiao Dongbua? Are you awake? Arbor asked kindly. Chapter 867. Xiao Dongbua and his 2 sons were drenched on the spot, and the great king's clothes were inevitably stained with a puddle of water. They looked at each other with ugly expressions, then shifted their gazes to Arbor. In a place like the forest mystic realm. If I really wanted to go, why would I need to fight to the death to get a spot? Arbor looked impatiently at Xiao Dongbua and his son. What, I can't go without a spot? If I want to go in, do you think you trash can stop me? Arbor completely ignored how angry Xiao Dongbua's face was and said with a sneer. Do I have to use your Xiao family's name, risk my life, and pester you to go to the mystic realm to get treasures? Xiao Dongbua, is your brain damaged or am I stupid? Ah! This kind of idea of harming others for your own benefit, you're pretty good. Arbor clapped his little hands and stood up, coldly glancing at Xiao Dongbua and his sons. Hurry up and disappear from my sight. Scram! Xiao Mu shouted, and her icy face was instantly covered in a layer of terrifying killing intent. This angry shout scared Xiao Dongbua so much that he retreated a few steps. When he stood up, his entire face was red and twisted. Xiao Dongbua's second son, Xiao Zhonghao, supported his eldest son, Xiao Zhongda, and angrily looked at Arbor. You don't even want the old ancestor anymore, do you? Arbor mockingly curled his lips. If the Qiao family's old ancestor really knows, he'll be so angry that he'll come back to life. Vicious woman! Xiao Zhonghao angrily scolded, his entire face filled with shock and anger, as if he would explode in the next moment and tear Arbor to pieces. Wei Ziqin was furious. Xiao Zhonghao, do you have to argue about the Qiao family's matters with us here? Since the Qiao family isn't afraid of being humiliated, then I'll have a good talk with you. Who's the vicious woman, who's the shameless one? You bunch of black-hearted villains. Why don't you look at your own face in the mirror? Aren't you ashamed or blushing? Wei Ziqin's eyes widened as she reprimanded sternly, back then, on the second day after my family's old Xiao and I moved to the Mo Kingdom capital, we brought gifts to visit the main family according to the rules. And the result? There was no way to enter. He was driven out of the main family. Mother! Arbor and Jolin both looked at her and asked, is that true? Xiao Yalan and her second uncle had never mentioned the humiliation they had suffered in front of the children, so Jolin and the others didn't know about it at all. Xiao Zhongda, do you dare to say no? It was you. What did he say to us when he crossed his arms and looked down on us like a snob? Ha! Don't you remember? You're just a country bumpkin. You want to bring some trash to climb up the social ladder? Go back to where you came from. I'm going to return those words to you right now. Wei Ziqin said angrily, word by word, you greedy bastard. You want to use some bullshit quota to climb up the ranks of my daughter, the noble crown princess? Scram back to where you came from. Wei Ziqin harumphed at the last sentence, glaring at Xiao Zhongda and his brother with a sharp glint in her eyes. Xiao Zhongda shrunk his neck in fright and retreated a step weakly. Whoosh! A thin piece of paper was flung at Xiao Dongbua's face. Arbor glanced at the old man mockingly. Look clearly at what's written in black and white. Chapter 868. The family separation document is written clearly enough, right? Those with good eyes should be able to read it. Arbor coldly swept a glance at Xiao Dongbua. I see that you're already so old, so I respect you and call you old sir. Otherwise, you're a shameless old man. You! Xiao Dongbua was so angry that his heart, liver, spleen, and lungs were violently trembling. Arbor spread her fingers, and that thin family separation document immediately flew back into her palm with a whoosh. Our family has already separated from Qiao Zhongheng's group of demons and monsters, let alone you guys, who don't know what you're talking about. What, do you think that just because you have the Xiao character on your name, you're family with us? You're deluding yourself into thinking that you can climb the social ladder and talk about friendship with me? Just based on your moral integrity? Are you even worthy? Arbor bluntly mocked. Good, good. Xiao Dongbua was already so angry that he couldn't make a sound, and only his fingers were trembling. He abruptly turned his head and grabbed his son Xiao Zhonghao's shoulder, loudly shouting, "Let's go." Arbor leisurely folded that family separation document and coldly swept a glance at Xiao Dongbua and the rest. Family head Xiao, I hope that you're a good person and don't go out and carelessly spread rumors. You know that people who spread rumors will also go to the hell of having their tongues pulled out after they die. They'll never be reincarnated. Arbor practically said the last sentence through gritted teeth, one word at a time, until Xiao Dongbua and the rest felt a chill run down their spine, and they turned their heads to take a look. But they saw that the little girl under the waning lights seemed to have a ghostly aura, and the black gates of hell seemed to be faintly visible behind her back, frightening them to the extreme. Xiao Dongbua shrank back and supported the weak and powerless Xiao Zhongda. The father and son trio left the main hall in a huff, not even bothering to say goodbye to the others. The remaining people from the 7 great patrician families and the great king's Empress Xiao didn't look so good on their faces. The great king cautiously glanced at his daughter-in-law's dark expression, then secretly peeked at his son, a trace of helplessness rising in his heart. Sigh, so tired. Now that the banquet had turned out like this, everyone's interest was waning. Humph, the entire Qiao clan is filled with foul air. None of them are good people. Mu Qianqian sneered. Her voice was neither loud nor soft, but it just happened to fall into everyone's ears. As soon as he said this, Empress Xiao felt even worse. She originally had a lot of complaints about this little stoic. Now that she saw that this stoic's family members weren't all that great, she felt very uncomfortable. Mo Lian's icy gaze landed on Mu Qianqian's face, and it only took an instant for Mu Qianqian to subconsciously shudder. Madame Mu suddenly reached out and grabbed her daughter's hand. Her eyes widened in horror. Mu Boming raised his hand, and a defensive talisman abruptly leaped onto his daughter Mu Qianqian's body. He then shouted, "Your Highness!" Bang! The wine cup in front of Mu Qianqian cracked on its own. Mu Qianqian's entire face was ghastly pale. Because the defensive talisman had helped her block an invisible killing move, even though her little life was saved, her internal organs were hurting from the impact of the residual energy. In that instant just now, she very clearly experienced how ruthless His Highness was when he wanted to end her life on the spot. Mu Qianqian heard the sound of her heart abruptly shattering. It was very painful. She had only muttered that woman's family was complicated, and she was nearly killed by His Highness. Did this man not allow others to say anything bad about her? Chapter 869. Mu Boming's face was shrouded in a dark haze. Family head Mu gazed coldly at Prince Mo and said, "My humble daughter was rude to the crown princess first, but her crime doesn't warrant death, right? Hope that your highness will forgive her." Mo Lian retracted the powerful force she had released to target Mu Qianqian and also cast an aloof glance at family head Mu. "Family head Mu, your daughter has repeatedly offended our wife. According to the rules, she should be severely punished." Mu Boming's expression shifted, and he looked up at the great king and Empress Xiao sitting at the front. The king's face was a little embarrassed. He had just received such a heavy gift from the Mu family's patriarch, 2 peace talismans. On the other hand, his precious son wanted to make an example of the Mu family's patriarch's daughter. No matter how he looked at it, this was not very kind. The old great king quickly chuckled dryly and sent his son a look as he said, "It's just some small animosity between young ladies. It's fine, it's fine." Seeing his daughter-in-law raise her head and glare at him coldly, the old king's heart thumped, and he hurriedly said, "That, Mu family head, there are still some etiquette and rules that need to be taught to Miss Mu. In the future, it's best not to be impudent in front of the crown princess." Mu Boming responded gravely. There was already no need to continue the banquet at this point. The great king was mentally exhausted, and he hastily pacified everyone before dismissing the banquet with a long sigh of relief. Heavens! If this banquet continued, who knew how much more trouble it would stir up? Mo Lien personally sent Arbor's family back before returning to the palace. On the way back, she instructed Huifeng, send someone to keep an eye on Xiao Dongbua's family. If they dare to make any moves, then Mo Lien gestured for them to be killed on sight. Huifeng nodded in acknowledgement. On the other side, as soon as Mu Qianqian stepped out of the palace gates and boarded the carriage, she couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Madame Mu shrieked in fright. Mu Qianqian didn't want to say anything more to her mother, so she simply closed her eyes and pretended to faint. When Mu Boming heard his wife's screams from inside the carriage, his eyes flickered impatiently. He swung his horsewhip and said, "Send Madame and Miss back to the estate." That night at midnight, Mu Qianqian, who was lying flat on a large bed made of cedar wood, abruptly opened her eyes and got off the bed like a wandering soul. After lighting an incense stick in a corner of the room, she sat back down in front of the dressing mirror and fiddled with her beautiful hair. Outside, there was only a sliver of moonlight spilling on the window lattice, and it was pitch black. Ha ha ha! A sinister laugh suddenly appeared behind her. Eldest young Miss Mu, why did you summon this old man so late at night? The voice that seemed to come from the netherworld was erratic and hoarse. It was so low that it didn't sound like a human's voice. Mu Qianqian gazed into the mirror. That shadow was very short and small, and its entire body was shrouded under a hood. She had never seen this person's face clearly. Black Cat, I promise you, I'll help you steal that top-notch summoning talisman enshrined in the ancestral hall. The shadow was clearly agitated, and its voice started trembling slightly. Really? I have a condition in exchange. Mu Qianqian abruptly stood up in front of the mirror. Under the moonlight, her small face had already contorted into a ball. I heard that you can draw an especially powerful and special talisman. What? The hoarse voice asked. Soul exchange talisman. The shadow was clearly shocked by Mu Qianqian's words. Chapter 870. Subsequently, the black shadow let out a series of unpleasant cackles. Eldest Miss Mu, you actually understand us curse practitioners quite well. Mu Qianqian pursed her lips tightly and clenched her fists tightly. It was only after a long while that she couldn't resist roaring, deal or not? Deal. The black shadow cackled. I can give you the soul swap talisman 7 days later. At that time, remember to give me that summoning talisman that your Mu family treasures. Remember, you only have one chance to successfully swap your soul. If you fail, you will vomit blood and become paralyzed in the lightest case, and your soul will scatter and you will lose your life on the spot. Gaga gaga gaga. This little lady is rather courageous. The laughter was like a wisp of black mist that faded away. Great Master Black Cat. Great Master. Mu Qianqian pushed open the door and searched for the black cat's figure under the moonlight. The black cat had long left, and Mu Qianqian angrily clenched her fists as she muttered to herself, just under what circumstances can I use that soul swap talisman? Just how high are the chances of success? After Mu Qianqian walked in, she used her back to press against the door as she kept muttering to herself, I want to become the Crown Prince Consort, I am the Crown Prince Consort, I am the Crown Prince Consort. I am the Crown Princess. Qianqian, Mother can see it now. The Crown Prince simply doesn't have any interest in you. Look at how ruthless his methods are, hurting you like this twice. You should give up on him as soon as possible to avoid being covered in bruises. Her mind kept replaying the words that Mother had said while wiping her tears while she was pretending to be unconscious. She was unresigned. Mother had always said that she was the one with the greatest hope of becoming the Crown Princess. And she had always held on to this goal to strive for, working hard to curry favor with Her Majesty the Queen and all the concubines in the imperial harem. Her Majesty the Queen had summoned her more than once and was very satisfied with her. Originally, everything was fine. She only needed to wait peacefully to be conferred the title of Crown Princess. But why did everything change in a single night? It was that little bitch who stole all the glory that belonged to her and shamelessly stole away her beautiful future. Since it was useless to beg her father, mother, and anyone else, she could only think of a way to do it herself. Thud. Return. Come on. I am the Crown Princess. I am. I am. The more she muttered, the more resolute her gaze became. She raised the sleeve of her white undergarment and waved it in the air in front of her. A strange smile appeared on the corner of her mouth as she coquettishly said, "There's no need to be so courteous. You may all rise." At this moment, the Shu residence had also sunk into a cloud of gloom. The mistress had attempted to hang herself in the middle of the night. After she was rescued, the master flew into a rage and scolded her fiercely. Then, he flung his sleeves and left. At daybreak, Madame Shu started to make a fuss again. She cried and made a fuss, looking for ropes and moving stools, scaring a large group of maidservants until their faces turned pale. Because when the sun was still rising, the etiquette instructor sent by the queen sat outside Madame Shu's bedroom. Her eyelids drooped and the corners of her mouth curled up as she said sternly, "This old servant is Nanny Gong, who came on the orders of Her Majesty the Queen to teach Madame Shu etiquette and rules again." Madame Shu didn't want to live anymore. This unruly old servant had been sitting outside her courtyard early in the morning, repeating the same sentence over and over again. Perhaps the concubines in the master's rear courtyard were rolling on their beds with laughter right now. Chapter 871. She had boasted of being wise all her life, but she didn't expect that she would suffer such a humiliation at the hands of a young stinky girl. Madame Shu felt that she didn't have the face to continue living. Today, in the noble women's circle in the capital, this trivial matter of hers must have already spread. "Madam, fourth young miss is here." Madame Shu tightly grasped her daughter's hand as she wailed loudly. "Mother." Shu Hui also didn't feel good. In her eyes, her mother was a very strong-willed person. In front of her father's concubines, she was usually unyielding. When had she ever seen her mother reveal such a weak side, crying like a child? Child, you must work hard, understand? As long as you become the Crown Prince's secondary consort and obtain the Crown Prince's favor, you'll be able to get back at me for all the anger I suffered yesterday. Do you know what that woman relied on? Madame Shu exhorted her younger daughter. She relied on His Highness the Crown Prince's power, which is why she dared to beat your mother so wantonly. Woo, pitiful mother is already so old, yet she still had to be beaten by a little slut in public. She has no face left. Not only that, in order to defile your mother, that slut actually instigated His Highness the Crown Prince to send an etiquette instructor to humiliate your mother in public. You must work hard, understand? Work hard. Mother, I know. I will definitely work hard and have His Highness marry me. I will snatch His Highness's favor from that slut's hands and help mother take revenge. Shu Hui nodded with effort. When Shu Quan, who had just entered the room, heard her mother's words, she was so angry that she almost fell backwards. She hastily lifted the curtain and walked in. She hastily said, "Mother, what are you saying?" With younger sister's family background and looks, it's also possible for her to be a duke's wife. Why must you insist on getting close to His Highness? Although the title of secondary consort sounds nice, in reality, you're still a concubine. When you enter and meet the Crown Princess, you still have to kneel and offer her tea. Moreover, you all personally witnessed how His Highness treats the Crown Princess yesterday. Between His Highness and the Crown Princess, how could this little sister be allowed to interfere? Mother, you're pushing little sister into the fire pit. Madame Shu slapped the bed forcefully. She was so angry that her entire body trembled. She glared at her eldest daughter Shu Quan and said, "Unfilial daughter. What kind of nonsense was that? Hui is mother's flesh and blood, how could mother harm her? Shu Quan, you married the son of the great king and became his official wife. You're living a blissful and glorious life. You won't allow your sister to be the crown prince's concubine? What are you trying to do? You can't bear to see your sister marry the crown prince. Do you think she's better than you? Hearing this, Shu Hui looked coldly at her elder sister. She felt extremely ashamed in her heart. To think that she used to think that her elder sister was a good person. In fact, in front of benefits, sisterly affection was bullshit. Shu Quan was so angry that her chest heaved up and down. The veins on her forehead were popping out. Mother, is this how you think of your daughter? I don't care what you think. Madame Shu shouted sternly and slapped the bed forcefully. In any case, you can't block your sister's path. Shu Quan's footsteps swayed slightly. She hurriedly went up to support Shu Quan's arm. The son of the great king. Madam. Fourth miss. She wanted to say something, but Shu Quan pinched her arm and shut her mouth with reddened eyes. Chapter 872. Mother, can you listen to me calmly? Shu Quan's eyes contained a trace of moisture as she bit her lip and asked word by word. What else do you want to say? Madame Shu's vigilant gaze pierced Shu Quan's heart. His Highness is definitely not someone you can play around with. I hope you can understand this. Otherwise, the Shu family will definitely suffer a calamity. The entire Shu family will definitely not be left alive. Shu Quan blinked back the moisture in her eyes and turned to look at her younger sister, who had a cold expression. Younger sister, elder sister hopes that you can live well. Marrying His Highness the Crown Prince is definitely not a good choice. You also saw what happened to father's concubines. It's really not easy to be a concubine. Shu Hui's bright eyes widened, and she suddenly said impatiently, I'm not being a concubine for an ordinary family. I'm being a side consort for His Highness the Crown Prince. Elder sister, you don't have to worry so much. You'd better keep those women in your first prince's residence under control. Shu Quan was so angry that she staggered and said with a smile, all right, I was being nosy. Let's go. Shu Quan walked out a few steps before stopping and turning to say, Mother, fourth sister. I hope you can open your eyes and see clearly. A man's heart isn't something you can immediately win over just by trying hard. At least, that's not the case for His Highness in my eyes. He's firm, decisive, and resolute. On the surface, he looks as gentle as jade and makes people feel like they're bathing in the spring breeze. In reality, he's the most callous, indifferent, tyrannical, and heartless man in the world. At least before the appearance of the crown princess, I've never seen him stare at a woman for so long. I'm certain of one thing. If you dare to ruin his relationship with the crown princess, I'll definitely kill him. I think he will definitely make our entire Shu family pay for your stupidity. After Shu Quan said this, she didn't look at her mother and younger sister again and led her out the door with her head held high. Only who was following behind her, clearly knew that the princess consort's body was still trembling. Her back was stiff, and she looked extremely lonely and pitiful. The sound of Madame Shu angrily smashing a vase could be heard from the central room. Shu Quan didn't stay any longer and directly left the Shu residence to board the carriage. As soon as she got into the carriage, she hugged her knees and started crying. She wiped her tears at the side and hugged her master helplessly, repeatedly shouting, Princess Consort, Princess Consort. Shu Quan only felt that from her heart to her 10 fingers, every fingertip was emitting a chill. It was so cold that her teeth were chattering uncontrollably. My mother actually said that I'm living a life of boundless splendor and happiness. Ha 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 ha. Shu Quan laughed until tears rolled down her cheeks. If I had a choice, I'd rather have nothing. Even if I have to ride a horse and sleep on the streets, it's still better than being entangled with those orioles and swallows. Princess Consort, you've suffered too much. She burst into tears. Shu Quan shook her head, teardrops falling onto the back of her hand. Actually, it doesn't matter if it's a little bitter. I just hope that everyone in my family will be fine. But now, I'm afraid all of this will become wishful thinking. Thump, 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 thump. The sound of the door knocking made classmate Arbor's hand, which was holding a brush, pause slightly. Without even turning his head, he said, "The door isn't closed. Come in yourself." Chapter 873. Sister, it's sunny today. Let's go out for a stroll. Qiao Lin jumps in a hurry. When she sees her sister drawing a talisman, she can't help but restrain her voice a little. She whispers, "Sister, you're drawing a talisman." "Anne, wait a moment, I'm about to finish." Qiao Lin sneaks to the table and pokes her head out to take a look. She can't understand what her sister is drawing. But Arbor lifts her wrist slightly and finishes the drawing quickly. She breathes a sigh of relief and looks down at the blue light emitted from the talisman paper. She nods with slight satisfaction. Last night when she slept until midnight, the golden talisman jade tome opened the fifth jade slip by itself. It officially opened the door to high-level talisman for her. She immediately wakes up excitedly and runs out of bed to light the lamp. In the second half of the night, she has been drawing 2 of the 5 spirit talismans taught by the demonstration talisman. Water Spirit Talisman, draw the power of the rare water spirit between heaven and earth to help the person who opens the talisman. Fire Spirit Talisman, draw the power of the rare fire spirit between heaven and earth. In addition, it also teaches the drawing of the defensive talisman, which is the talisman thrown by Mujia's head to resist Mo Lian's invisible power. On the 5th jade slip of the golden talisman jade tome, there is an additional line of small words. If you want to practice the forbidden talisman technique, strictly speaking, you need to open the 6th jade slip and so on. This jade slip can teach the most common talisman, the sickness talisman. If you want to learn, you can draw your Xian sense into the jade slip and open the hidden jade slip. If you practice the forbidden talisman technique, it's easy for you to go mad and your soul will scatter. Arbor decisively draws her Xian sense to open the hidden jade slip. Of course, she wants to learn, not to harm people, but to know herself and know the enemy. If she learns one thing, she can guard against it. In case there are some demons and monsters who want to hide in the dark to harm her, she can immediately see through it. In the middle of the night, Arbor has been tossing those talismans. After drawing hundreds of water spirit talismans and fire spirit talismans, she also drew a lot of defensive talismans. She only drew 2 sickness talismans. After mastering the essentials, she didn't continue to draw. The sickly talisman she drew was much stronger than the one she had planted on Miss Li. Her sickly talisman was a high-level sickly talisman while Miss Li's was only a low-level one. The two could not be compared. Arbor studied until Jolin knocked on the door and hopped in. Only then did he finish drawing the last defensive talisman. He put away the talisman pen and the stack of talismans and turned to look at her with a smile. "Where are you going to play?" Qiao Lin walked up with a chuckle to hook her arm. "Sister, I heard that a vaudeville troupe came to the Mo Kingdom capital, and their performance was quite good. Let's go take a look." "Is it the Luo family troupe?" "No." Jolin looked at her sister speechlessly. "The Luo family troupe is an opera troupe. He should still be in the palace right now." Arbor had heard that the Luo family troupe would stay in the palace until the 15th day of the first lunar month. He wondered if the great king's group of concubines would be tired of listening to operas every day. "Let's go, sister. Let's go now." "I'm going too." Qiao San instantly ran in from outside the door. No one knew how long he had been eavesdropping outside. At the same time, the little monk also came in like a shadow. Arbor nodded. "Then let's go. Benefactress, can you gift this little monk 1 or 2 of the talismans you drew earlier? This little monk can sense the dense aura of spiritual energy on the talisman paper." The little monk's round eyes flickered with intelligence. Chapter 874. When Jolin heard this, they immediately expressed that they also wanted it. 3 pairs of eyes stared at Arbor eagerly. Arbor only felt that it was somewhat funny. She took out some defensive talismans, water and fire talismans, and distributed them to the 3 children. We're going out now. Shouldn't we go to Beautiful View Garden and say hello to Mother first? Arbor brought the 3 children out of the door and said to her sister Jolene. Sister, there's no need to say hello. I know that Mother went out with Madame Wren early in the morning. Madame Wren? Arbor was slightly startled. Yes. Jolene held on to Arbor's hand and giggled, let's go, sister. Get someone to prepare the carriage. We're going to watch the vaudeville show. Only then did Arbor bring the 3 children out and head towards the U Family Troup's location, Spring Dawn Garden. Spring Dawn Garden was located on Hualing Street. It was parallel to Shilua Street's commoner district. Usually, there weren't many high officials and nobles who could come here. However, after this vaudeville troupe became popular recently, even the business on Hualing Street improved by a lot. There were also many high officials and nobles who came to watch the show. They booked the whole place the moment they arrived. As soon as Arbor's carriage entered Hualing Street, they followed the signs at the intersection and found their way to Spring Dawn Garden's entrance. There were already many carriages parked outside the garden. Jolene excitedly jumped out of the carriage. When she saw a small stall selling silk flowers at the entrance of the garden, she ran over by herself and gathered in front of the stall to watch. Auntie, your silk flowers look pretty good. Miss, do you want to buy a few? The old auntie selling silk flowers hurriedly said, you only need half a liter of rice to exchange for 5 silk flowers. The auntie had also heard that this vaudeville garden had become popular recently. That was why she came to sell silk flowers early in the morning. It was a pity that the young ladies and madams of the noble families who came and went all had their eyes on the top of their heads. They didn't even look at her small roadside stall. Okay, give me 5. Jolene was a rich woman. She had enough food in her inner world to last her for at least half a year. Not to mention that her elder sister had given her 2 storage talismans filled with peaches, winter fruits, and various other fruits and snacks. She estimated that she would be able to eat everything in these 2 storage talismans for a year and a half. Half a liter of millet in exchange for 5 silk flowers was too cheap for Jolene. She hurriedly took out a small bag of rice and handed it to the old woman. I'll buy it. Tisk, country bumpkin. A sarcastic laugh came from behind Jolene, but Jolene pretended not to hear it. He reached out and took the 5 silk flowers that the old woman handed to him with tears of gratitude. He picked a wooden box and put the silk flowers in it, happily holding it in his arms. Sister. Jolene turned around and saw the enchanting lady standing behind him. He rolled his eyes and pushed her away. Excuse me, good dogs don't block the way. Ah! The girl's body swayed and the 2 servant girls hurriedly supported her. You damned village woman. You actually dare to push this miss. Jolene didn't listen to her barking. She hurriedly hugged the wooden box and ran back to her elder sister's side. She handed the wooden box to her. Sister, I bought silk flowers. We sisters will each have 2 and the remaining 1 will be for younger brother. Xiao Sen had just jumped off the carriage. When he heard this, his eyes immediately widened. What are you giving it to me for? Giving it to your little girlfriend. Jolene winked at her younger brother. It's that little girl I saw on the way home from school. She's quite cute. Chapter 875. Xiao Sen's little face immediately turned awkward as he hurriedly said, Second sister, don't talk nonsense. That Sun Tian is also my classmate. Xiao Lin immediately reached out and pinched her brother's little face as she giggled, That's right, I want you to give it to her. Look, it's nice to be friends with your classmates. Arbor's little mouth curved as he held his brother's hand. Xiao Sen, you haven't bullied your classmates in the academy recently, right? No. Xiao Sen didn't expect that the topic would suddenly change to the academy. He immediately shook his little head and expressed his stance. Shaosun doesn't dare to forget elder sister's teachings for a single day. Ren Hongfei and I are now good friends. Really good friends? Really, really? Then what about your swine friend, Gao Fong, who was with you before? Qiao Mu asked worriedly. Qiao Sun laughed foolishly, we haven't played together for a long time. After school, I always go with Ren Hongfei and Sun Tian Tian. Second sister also saw it last time. Yes, 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 that little girl smiled so sweetly at you. So her name is Sun Tian Tian, her name is also sweet. Arbor's face darkened. Come, 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 let us three siblings divide this silk flower. Little brother, you must remember to bring this most playful and adorable silk flower to little sister Sun Tian Tian. Oh. Qiao Sun gloomily put away this maiden's gift as his little mouth secretly twitched. Stop! You country bumpkin, didn't you hear me call you? The young miss who was pushed away by Qiao Lin just now unrelentingly followed the siblings. She waved her hand and signaled for a few servants to come forward. She aggressively stood in front of the siblings' door with her hands on her hips. Qiao Lin immediately became angry. She placed her little hand on her waist as she stood in front of Arbor's Qiao Sen and angrily scolded the young miss, I say, are you done yet? I'm already ignoring you, what else do you want? Are you asking for a beating? Qiao Mu glanced at the young lady and recognized who she was. This was the third miss of the Marquis of Placation's estate, Su Mingzhu. Back then, when she was at the Qin estate, she had slapped an invisibility talisman on herself. When she saw Su Mingzhu torturing and killing the little beasts, she gave her a big slap in passing, causing Su Mingzhu to mistakenly think that it was Mu Qianqian who did it, and they got into a dogfight. It was fourth Miss Su Mingxin who had accompanied Su Mingzhu to Spring Dawn Garden to watch the sideshow performance. She recognized Qiao Mu with a glance, and she hastily went up to give a proper curtsy. Su Mingxin greets the Crown Prince Consort. Su Mingzhu was furious. During the New Year's banquet yesterday, everyone's focus was on that crown princess. Who would have noticed her, this elegant and refined little pitiful existence? Damn it! She was dressed up so beautifully, but the limelight was completely overshadowed by that country bumpkin crown princess. Do you want to cause trouble, huh? Qiao Lin rolled up her sleeves, looking like she was looking for someone to pick a fight with. She could tell that this neurotic woman in front of her was simply here to find trouble with them siblings. Sister. Fourth Miss Su hastily grabbed Su Mingzhu in fright. Sister, it's better not to be overly impudent in front of the crown princess. Scram! Su Mingzhu brusquely flung Su Mingxin's hand away and cast her a glance before scolding, useless thing, scram to the side. How the fuck did I get in your way by buying a silk flower? Qiao Lin retorted angrily, I ignored you when I heard your mockery earlier, yet you're still trying to pick on me, huh? Looking for a beating. Chapter 876. You're the one looking for a beating. Your whole family is looking for a beating. Su Mingzhu's anger surged as she pulled out a double-edged spear from her conscience. Let's talk after we fight. Seeing Su Mingzhu leap forward, a small figure suddenly appeared in front of Qiao Lin with a flash. The little monk's chubby face had a benevolent expression. He raised a chubby finger above his head and pointed at Su Mingzhu, who had jumped forward. This benefactress. This little monk sees a baleful aura on your face. Your brows are dark. I'm afraid it's an omen of great misfortune. Arbor's mouth twitched. Qiao Lin also broke down in an instant. She withdrew her angry expression and chuckled. Come back. Qiao Sun unhappily ran forward and picked up the little monk. Why are you joining in the fun? A little bald donkey like you dares to challenge me. Preposterous. Su Mingzhu's anger flared. She controlled her mystic energy and poured it all into the sharp blade. A cold light flashed through her eyes as she suddenly jumped up and aimed her spear at Qiao Sen's back. You're courting death. Qiao Lin, who was already prepared, suddenly threw a punch and directly knocked the other party's spear to the side. Water Spirit Talisman. The little monk suddenly turned his head and threw out the talisman. Boom! A water column swept out. Under the shocked and astonished gazes of Su Mingzhu and the others, Su Mingzhu and the group of menservants were sent flying in an instant. Bang 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 bang. The water column once again fell from the sky and hit Su Mingzhu and the others head-on. Su Mingzhu hastily activated her defensive mystic artifact to protect her body. This was still able to withstand the surging water spirit energy. Those manservants were miserable as they were all sent flying far away, groaning and groaning as they couldn't get up. This lasted for a full 3 minutes before the water spirit finally disappeared. Su Mingzhu had already spat out a mouthful of blood from the abuse and collapsed on the ground. As the water waves surged, no one dared to go forward. Some of the carriages that were heading toward Spring Dawn Garden stopped far away. Fourth young Miss Su wasn't affected. She covered her mouth with one hand and looked at her sister who was lying on the ground and unable to get up for the time being in shock. The little monk clapped his hands and said, "I told you not to do it. Benefactress. The omen of great misfortune has come true." Jolin laughed out loud and grabbed the little monk into his arms. He reached out to rub his chubby little face and said, "Kong Kong, you're really too cute. What's going on?" A gentle voice came from the carriage. The curtain of the carriage was lifted, and a beautiful girl walked down from the carriage. She glanced at Arbor and the others with a strange expression. At this time, the coachman suddenly cried out excitedly, Miss, don't you often ask me who was the person who saved you that day?" "It was her. It was that noble lady who saved you." Arbor also recognized the woman who came out of the carriage. She was Li Xiaoyi, the third daughter of Li Shaoqing of the Guanglu Temple. However, there was a strange emotion in Li Xiaoyi's eyes that shook slightly. She stepped forward and bowed respectfully to Arbor. "I didn't know that the one who saved me that day was your highness, the crown princess." Arbor nodded with an indifferent expression. "She was just passing by." Li Xiaoyi glanced at her as if she wanted to say something. Then, she glanced at Su Mingxin. "Fourth young Miss Su, what happened to you guys?" Su Mingxin smiled awkwardly. "There was a small misunderstanding between my third older sister and the crown princess." Chapter 877. Oh? Was it just a small misunderstanding? It escalated to the point of fighting? Li Xiaoyi cleverly didn't say anything, but her eyes flickered slightly when she saw third young Miss Su's miserable state. Su Mingxin bowed to Arbor again. "Crown Princess, this humble girl will take her leave first. Please forgive me." Arbor nodded and didn't feel like arguing with Su Mingzhu. Su Mingxin had someone help Su Mingzhu up and brought her to the carriage to return to the estate immediately. She was also very worried. Su Mingzhu had come out perfectly fine, but now she was being carried back. She didn't know if Madame would let her, a little concubine's daughter, off. "Older sister, who is that person? Do you know her?" Xiao Lin pursed her lips in the direction Su Mingzhu left. "You should have seen her at yesterday's banquet. She's the legitimate third young miss of the Marquis of Placation's estate, Su Mingzhu. There were so many orioles and swallows at yesterday's banquet. Who would remember who?" Xiao Lin puffed up her mouth and blew. This was precisely what Su Mingzhu couldn't swallow. She had dressed up beautifully to attend the banquet, thinking that she could outshine the crowd and attract the attention of a few noble young masters. In the end, the limelight was completely snatched away by the crown prince consort from the countryside. Li Xiaoyi said with a smile, "Crown princess, then let's enter the garden. May I know if the crown princess has reserved a private room beforehand? If not, if you don't mind, you can come to this humble girl's private room." Arbor led his brother and sister into Spring Dawn Garden's main hall. At first glance, there was a dense crowd. The main hall was already full. "That's fine. Then I'll have to trouble young Miss Li," Arbor thought for a moment before nodding in agreement. Since she was already here, if she didn't bring these monkeys to watch a sideshow performance, who knew how they would torment her? Li Xiu smiled slightly and gave a look to the maidservant beside her. Not long after, that maidservant brought a waiter over. He bowed and greeted them before leading the group to a private room on the second floor. There was a row of windows in the private room. When they pushed open the windows, they could see the lively performance below. The view was not bad. Soon, someone brought in some tea and snacks. They weren't very exquisite and were just enough to fill the stomach. A few children immediately cheered and ran to the window to lie down and watch with great interest. Arbor sat down at the table and poured himself a cup of tea. Then, he looked at Miss Li, who sat opposite him, and nodded slightly. "You can speak now." Miss Li was stunned. She looked at her in a daze. For a moment, she seemed to be a little embarrassed. "Crown Princess, what makes you think that my daughter has something to say?" "Your eyes told me." Arbor took a sip of tea and frowned slightly. This tea was really crude and plain. It didn't taste like tea at all. Li Xiu couldn't help but laugh. The Crown Princess is really straightforward. She raised her head and glanced at the two maidservants beside her. "You two leave first. I have something to say to the Crown Princess alone." The two maidservants hesitated and looked at each other. Under Li Xiu's sharp gaze, they finally left submissively. Li Xiu stood up decisively and walked to Arbor. She leaned to one side and bowed. "May the Crown Princess bestow an illness talisman." Arbor didn't expect that Li Xiu was here to ask for an illness talisman. She couldn't help but be stunned. "What do you want an illness talisman for?" Chapter 878. With Arbor's exceptional intelligence, she casually thought about it and couldn't help but exclaim in a low voice, "The illness charm that you were afflicted with last time? You also begged for it yourself? You purposely put the illness charm on yourself?" Li Xiu shook her head. "The illness charm last time was something I bought by chance in a talisman shop a few years ago. At that time, I bought it out of curiosity for fun, but I didn't expect it to come in handy. Since the Crown Princess can undo that illness charm, she's naturally a talisman expert. This humble girl begs the Crown Princess to bestow me with an illness charm. I beg you, Crown Princess." Li Xiu suddenly bowed her head and heavily kowtowed to Arbor. The three children turned around from the window and couldn't help but feel a little strange when they saw Li Xiu like this. But very quickly, their attention was once again attracted by the wonderful performance in the main hall. At this moment, in the main hall, a young juggler was leading a ferocious piebald tiger, causing waves of exclamations from the crowd. Arbor looked at Li Xiu for a while before saying with certainty, "At the banquet yesterday, I heard from Consort Cheng that you've already been betrothed to her son, the son of the great king, Mo Jiao. Do you think they'll give up on you after you use the illness charm? Consort Cheng wouldn't let her son marry a dying person into the family." Li Xiu's eyes were especially bright. She wouldn't be able to stand that bad luck. "That's true." Arbor nodded. Marrying a concubine was a joyous matter. No one would be willing to marry a half-dead concubine into the family, as it would be tainted with bad luck. Everyone else wants to marry the prince, why aren't you willing? Li Xiu didn't hide her disdain for Mo Jiao at all and spat, "He already has so many wives and concubines, his body is dirty and smelly, I don't like him at all." Arbor curved her small mouth, feeling that Miss Li's words were very interesting and somewhat to her taste. But usually, when a young lady is forced to marry, don't they cry, throw a tantrum, and threaten to hang themselves? What's the point of that? Li Xiu raised her head and looked at Arbor with a determined gaze. "I don't want to do such a stupid thing for a stinky man like him. If I'm so sick that I can't even get out of bed, I believe that Consort Cheng won't carry such an unlucky person like me into the great king's mansion." Arbor nodded and began to appreciate Miss Li's straightforwardness. "You're just an ordinary person, but you're braver than most people in this world." "Good. I'll help you, but you have to promise me one thing." "Crown Princess, please speak." "This humble girl isn't afraid of climbing a mountain of blades or diving into a pot of boiling oil. Li Xiu-yi exclaimed as she gazed at Xiao Mu with bright eyes. I don't need you to climb a mountain of swords, nor do I need you to jump into a frying pan. As long as you keep it a secret. You can't tell anyone that I'm a charm master. Xiao Mu didn't want to seek trouble for herself. Curse practitioners had been labeled as demonic beings and had always been suppressed by various parties. If someone with ulterior motives found out that she could create illness curses and was an out-and-out curse practitioner, then it would certainly cause a lot of trouble. Although she wasn't afraid, she found it annoying. I, Li Xiu-yi, swear to the heavens that if I dare to reveal the crown princess secret one day, I will be condemned by the heavens and die a horrible death. Arbor nodded and then took out a sickness charm from her inner world and put it in her hand. She said to her with a serious expression, this sickness charm of mine is much more powerful than the one you had before. Chapter 879. This is a high-level sickness talisman. Once I use it on you, the pain will be 100 or 1,000 times worse than before. You have to be prepared to endure it. Li Xiu-yi's eyes lit up, and she nodded vigorously. Yes, I'm prepared. After I use this talisman on you, I will first use the talisman's power to seal the sickness talisman for 10 hours. This way, when you get home, it will suddenly act up around 10 in the morning. Yes. Li Xiu-yi shuffled forward on her knees, her eyes filled with longing as she looked at Arbor. Crown Princess, I'm not afraid. Please use it. It was Arbor's first time seeing a girl so longing for sickness. Shaking her head, she took out a high-level safety talisman and handed it to her. You must not lose this talisman. When you really can't take it anymore, use the talisman. It can dispel the curse on your body. Yes. Li Xiu-yi's eyes were filled with gratitude when she saw that the little girl was already so considerate of her. At the banquet, she had always heard people whispering about how the crown princess was arrogant and unreasonable, how she was cold-hearted and expressionless. But now that she had the courage to interact with her, she realized that the crown princess wasn't as bad as people said. Under the crown princess's expressionless and icy face, there was a soft and gentle heart hidden. Only when one was close to her could they see it clearly. That was why it was useless to rely on hearsay when dealing with people. Some people and some things could only be seen clearly if you used your heart to interact with them and think about them. You shouldn't just follow what others say without any opinions of your own. Consort Cheng is an old fox. She might test you many times. It might take a long time. Arbor took out a small bottle of medicine from her sleeve and handed it to her. This medicine can help you temporarily block your 5 senses. If it's too painful, just block it. Li Xiu-yi was already so moved that she couldn't speak. She nodded heavily with tears in her eyes. Crown Princess, I can't repay your kindness. Once my daughter passes this hurdle, if you need anything in the future, please don't hesitate to ask. Arbor activated the talisman, and a stream of light flowed into Li Xiu-yi's forehead. Li Xiu-yi suddenly felt a chill spread through her limbs, but it quickly dispersed. Arbor put down 2 fingers and lightly said, I've locked it up for you. The talisman power will be maintained for 5 hours before it dissipates. At that time, you should be prepared, it should be very painful. Then, Arbor clenched his fist slightly and crushed the sickly talisman in his hand into powder and dissipated. Get out, all of you get out. A loud noise came from the hall below. The Qin estate's eldest young master has already monopolized this place. Get out. Li Xiu-yi was in a good mood now that she had gotten rid of one of her worries. She was not afraid of pain, but she was afraid of marrying a disgusting man and having to bear his children for him. She would be disgusted to death if she had to face him for the rest of her life. Hearing the noise coming from downstairs, they all went to the window and looked down. The door to the private room was suddenly pushed open, and a person who looked like a vice-troop leader walked in while rubbing his hands together awkwardly. I'm really sorry, ladies and young masters. The Qin estate's eldest young master has booked the entire place and invited his friends from the pugilistic world to watch the performance. So, this. Ladies and gentlemen, please rest assured that the fee will definitely be refunded to you. Li Xiu's face immediately darkened. Is this a matter of money? Chapter 880. When the vice troop master saw Li Xiu's unrelenting attitude, he couldn't help but grumble inwardly. When he had gone to greet the people in the other private rooms earlier, when they heard that it was the Qin estate's eldest young master, they all impatiently went down to greet that young Master Qin with fawning expressions. But these two ladies before him, one was expressionless, while the other was scowling. They didn't seem easy to drive away. Li Xiu glanced coldly at the vice troop master. Go down and tell that eldest young Master Qin that his banquet is for his guests and has nothing to do with us. If he wants to clear the place, tell him to come up himself and talk to us. The vice troop master answered obsequiously. Seeing that these two ladies didn't seem like people to be trifled with, he hastily waved his hand and obediently left. Crown Princess. Li Xiu turned to look at Arbor. Arbor waved her hand and said, "They're only here to watch the show. No need to be long-winded with them." The children saw that the performance had ended and the commotion had ended. The people in the lobby downstairs were all walking out, so they couldn't help but purse their lips and turn to ask Arbor, "Sister, they're not performing anymore. Let's wait a bit. Do you want to come over and eat some fruit first?" She took out some fresh fruit from her inner world and waved at the three children. Jolin and the other two hurried over, and each of them picked up an orange and started peeling it. At this moment, the vice troop master knocked on the door again and walked in, saying awkwardly, "Young Master Qin and some of his friends have said to invite you all down." Arbor hooked her finger at the vice troop master. The vice troop master ran over obsequiously. Mississippi Arbor abruptly reached out and clasped the vice troop master's neck, ruthlessly pressing his old face onto the table. With a loud bang, the vice troop master felt half of his face hurt terribly, and it was probably going to turn completely green. Arbor said coldly, "If you don't want to die, tell them to come up." With that said, she released the small hand clasping the back of his neck. The vice troop master felt his entire body turn cold, and he involuntarily shuddered. "Bring in some hot water." Arbor glanced at him coldly. The vice troop leader didn't dare to speak any more nonsense. He nodded his head repeatedly, bowed, and cautiously walked out of the door step by step. A few minutes later, the waiter brought hot water in with a respectful expression. Footsteps could be heard coming from the stairs. Not long after, the door to the private room was pushed open. Eldest young Master Qin's tall and slender figure appeared at the door in a dark purple robe. There was a dot of cinnabar between his eyebrows, and his eyes were beautiful and captivating. His long hair was still untied and hung loosely below his waist. His entire being exuded a wild and charming aura. I was wondering which ominous star was causing trouble. Qin Xian smirked when he saw Arbor. He leaned against the door and looked at the little girl with a smile. "So it's you, the unreasonable little fiend." Arbor glanced at him expressionlessly and said coldly, "Who are you?" Qin Xian rolled his eyes and strode in with his long legs. He dragged a stool to sit down in front of her and looked at her calmly. "Don't pretend, all right? Mu Xiaobao, I know it's you. Don't think that I won't recognize you just because you changed your face." Arbor reflexively reached out to touch her little face and continued with a wooden expression, "I don't know what you're talking about." "Ha ha," eldest young Master Qin snorted. Chapter 881. There's no point in pretending like this. Qin Xian raised his wrist and grandly poured himself a cup of tea. He looked at Arbor with a grin and said, "Little Bao, we haven't seen each other for half a month. Isn't it too fake for you to say that you don't know me?" Li Xiu snuck a glance at Arbor. She didn't understand the situation, so she wasn't in a hurry to interrupt. "Eldest young sir, why don't you introduce us?" A dozen or so young men and women rushed in noisily. The one who spoke was a powder-faced man who boasted of being dissolute and fanned himself with a folding fan. Arbor only felt that this person looked somewhat familiar. Situ-E was the last to enter. When he saw Arbor, he couldn't help but be startled before exclaiming in surprise, "Little junior sister." Arbor rolled her eyes. This time, she couldn't continue pretending. Arbor also recognized the two people beside Situ-E. One was that weakling Shang Kun from Daybreak sect, and the other was the sect master's daughter, Liang Qingqing. "Little junior sister." Liang Qingqing happily walked forward and greeted her. "Senior brother Situ, senior sister Liang." Arbor nodded at the two. Qin Xian couldn't help but be amused. "Not pretending anymore?" Arbor snorted and turned her head to give him a lukewarm look. She then stood up and said, "Let's go." Since senior brother Situ was here, then she would give senior brother face. Miss Li also stood up. Arbor had just walked to the door when a man with a glossy powdered face pulled out a folding fan to block her path. "Hey, Mississippi. Since you're here, then stay here and play with everyone." The man winked at her with a mischievous grin. He waved his fan back and forth in the middle of winter, looking very self-righteous and flirtatious. Situ-E was just about to warn the man when he saw eldest Miss Chow pick up a flower pot placed on the flower shelf by the door. With a bang, she smashed it on the head of the pink-faced youth, knocking him down on the spot. Qin Xian's mouth twitched, and he couldn't help but raise his hand to rub his forehead. Was this Hu Yukong of the Marquis of Su An's estate a fool? Back when he was at the Qin estate, the little stoic had smashed him with a flower pot. His head was wrapped in layers of bandages, and he only recovered after recuperating for more than half a month. Now they're here again. History was shockingly similar. Hu Yukong stood up with his head covered in blood. He touched his head and screamed, someone come. Young Master Hu, young Master Hu." The people at the door immediately became a mess. Some hurriedly ordered people to get gauze and water to bandage their wounds, while others were trembling with fear and pale faces as they used their bodies to block Arbor. Jolin rolled up his little sleeves, looking like he was ready to fight. Just as the commotion was going on, the sound of footsteps came from the stairs. Arbor turned his head and saw Blackie's anxious face appear at the entrance of the staircase. "Eldest Miss." "Hey," Zeke gasped for breath and hurriedly ran up to her and cried out in alarm, "Something happened at home." Arbor's pupils contracted instantly, and his entire body's aura froze to the extreme. He lifted his leg and kicked the person blocking his way. Scram! Then he directly walked to Blackie's side. Miss Li, Jolin, and the other two also ran out the door. "Wait a minute, you smashed my head, so you can't leave." Hu Yukong's body swayed as he staggered 2 steps forward. Someone suddenly cried out in alarm, "Young Master Hu, that's the crown princess. You didn't attend the banquet yesterday, so you don't know that she." Arbor left this group of people behind and hastily followed Blackie down the stairs. Chapter 882. When Madame and Madame Ren were riding the carriage home, they were stopped by someone halfway. "Hey," Z said anxiously. Lord heard from Sister Chunying that eldest Miss had come to Spring Dawn Garden, so he sent Hey, Z to search for Mississippi. "Where is my mother right now?" Xiao Lin asked anxiously. "Second Miss, Madame was abducted. Those people even injured Madame Ren." Hey, Z hastily said. Madame Ren also said that Madame was also injured at the time, but it wasn't serious. Those people are aggressive and well-trained. They don't look like ordinary hooligans. Arbor clenched her fists. Sure enough, they had great guts. Someone dared to directly attack her mother in the Mo Kingdom capital's territory. Since they dared to do it, she dared to destroy them at all costs. Then what do we do now? Xiao Lin cried out anxiously. "Did my father find out who abducted my mother?" Lord doesn't have a clue at all. When Hey Z left, Lord had already brought people to the capital magistrate's office to report the case. The capital magistrate must be as anxious as ants on a hot pan when he received the report that a madam of a marquis's estate had been abducted in broad daylight in the capital under the watchful eyes of everyone. Arbor paused and took out a talisman pen, writing a few strokes on the communication jade talisman. She then turned back and said to Hey Z, send second miss and the others back to the residence first. Sister will handle this matter. Don't worry, go home first. Yes. Hey Z nodded. Eldest miss, please be careful. If there's any news, discuss it with Lord first. Arbor nodded coldly and then watched as Hey Z brought Xiao Lin and the others into the carriage and left. At this time, the communication jade talisman in her palm was already slightly warm. Arbor flipped it open, and a layer of frost covered her face. She suddenly roared at the sky, good. Excellent. Lightning's heart involuntarily skipped a beat when she saw her suddenly dashing off in a certain direction at lightning speed. She hurriedly used the jade messenger talisman to hastily write a sentence, the crown prince consort has gone to the Qiao estate. Quickly send someone over. Then, he hurriedly followed her footsteps. With a wave of his hand, a dozen or so black figures appeared from the shadows and followed closely behind. She knew the position of the Qiao family's main family very well. After all, she had stayed in that family for a period of time in her previous life and had seen the faces of that family. Walking west from Hualing Street, it didn't take long for them to arrive at the main entrance of the Qiao family's residence. The two red-striped stone lions were squatting there with ferocious expressions as usual. Their mouths were wide open, and they looked like they were about to tear everything apart. This was the main residence of the Qiao family. Arbor's eyes seemed to be smeared with a layer of frost. He stretched out his hand and summoned Qing Yuan. Go, smash their door. Today, I'll allow you to eat as much as you want. Whoever dares to stop us, you can eat him. Lightning and the others who came with her were all stunned when they heard the crown princess's fierce words. This was the main residence of the Qiao family, and the crown princess was still a girl from the Qiao family. If she did this, she would be cursed by the world for betraying her ancestors and forgetting her roots. Betraying his ancestors and forgetting his roots? Paw! This bunch of shameless villains, what right did they have to say that they were Arbor's clan relatives? She wouldn't acknowledge a single one of them. Since she didn't acknowledge their identities, how was she betraying her ancestors and forgetting her roots? Qing Yuan happily spread its wings and rose into the air. It screeched sharply in the direction of the main entrance and shot an ice pillar down. A loud boom sounded. Chapter 883. The main door was instantly smashed by Qing Yuan's brute force, creating a hole the size of a ball. The two servants who were hiding behind the door, eavesdropping and laughing, were immediately thrown out tragically, letting out two shrill screams. Qing Yuan circled twice in the air before suddenly swooping down. Several sharp ice blades once again shot out from its mouth, ripping the two main doors apart on the spot, nailing them full of holes. The two broken door boards tottered for a moment before collapsing with a boom, unable to withstand the force. The people of the Qiao clan all rushed out from their respective rooms, hurriedly rushing towards the main door. They were simply dumbstruck, not expecting that there would be someone so daring in broad daylight, directly attacking their Qiao clan's main residence. What the fuck? Who exactly was it? They actually had the guts to do such a thing? A swarm of people rushed towards the entrance, dumbstruck as they looked in front of them. At this time, it was close to dusk. A wisp of the setting sun hung over the treetops, and a few gusts of cold wind brushed past. They saw a little girl wearing plain pink clothes, holding an enormous club that was half her height, standing at the Qiao estate's entrance, looking at them with an indifferent expression. In the depths of her vicious eyes, it seemed like a tiger or wolf was roaring. Have Qiao Dongbua come out? Arbor stared at the group of Qiao clan disciples who ran out, his voice indifferent as he spoke. What kind of person dares to rush to the Qiao estate's entrance and shout? Who do you think you are? If you have my grandfather come out to see you, he will. Ah! Xiao and I only felt that her neck seemed to have been hooked by something. For a moment, she widened her eyes in fright, and before she could resist, she had already been swiftly pulled over. The brothers and sisters beside her tried to reach out to grab her, but how could they resist that huge force? Xiao and I instantly fell into an ice-cold little palm, her entire body trembling for no reason. Looking up, she just happened to look into the little girl's pair of frosty eyes that were filled with dense cold intent. What kind of pitch-black, serene, and endless eyes were those? Xiao and I opened her mouth, but before she could speak, she felt a sudden pain on her cheek. The little girl had already given her a big slap in the face with lightning speed. Xiao and I, the young miss of the main family who gave her quite a bit of suffering in her previous life, Xiao Zhongda's extremely talented daughter. She remembered that when she was 9 years old, she had followed her father to the Qiao family's main residence. Since then, she had been living in a small, dilapidated courtyard outside the main residence. During this period of time, this Miss Qiao had often brought a group of young masters and young ladies to her house to flaunt her prowess. She had arrogantly ordered her to do all kinds of hard and tiring work, treating her like the lowest servant girl. At that time, she had never opened her profound, but she had never given up on herself. With the elegant title of the Qiao family's trash on her head, she was looked down upon by everyone in the Qiao family. Anyone could step up and step on her. She didn't expect to meet Xiao and I for the first time in this life. In her previous life, the seemingly unreachable Xiao and I was actually so weak that she could summon her with a wave of her hand. To be honest, there were many things that she didn't want to pursue. In particular, it wasn't the kind of great hatred that was as deep as a sea of blood. In fact, she couldn't be bothered to bother herself with some trivial daily conflicts, such as the trifling matter with Zhou Tao in Quoto village. This was also in order to let go of that ice-cold and broken heart of hers. Those young masters and young ladies of the main family like Xiao and I were indeed hateful. During those dark days between the ages of 9 and 16, when she had yet to open her profound, who knew how much pain and suffering they had inflicted on her body and soul? Chapter 884. She could not care less about these things. She could treat those trials and hardships as the greatest test of her life. It was the polishing of her temperament and also the creation of her current life. Because, after all, those were matters from her previous life. In this life, these things simply never happened. She didn't want to cling to the past, but she ultimately couldn't walk out of her past attachment. For example, she simply couldn't walk out of the matter with Fan Qiuhe. So the moment they met, she simply couldn't control her impulsive heart and wanted to kill him on the spot. Yes. She wanted to kill Fan Qiuhe. She especially wanted to kill him at the banquet that day. She knew that her behavior at that time was especially like someone with a mental problem. She was sick. She herself was very clear that strictly speaking, this could be a kind of psychological illness. It was as if these things clearly never happened in this life, but the moment she saw Xiao and I, her body actually reacted with pain. She felt that the little finger that Xiao and I broke in her previous life was currently twitching slightly. This was a kind of psychological torture. To tell the truth, after returning to the capital for so long, she simply didn't intend to have any relationship with the main Xiao family. It was fine to treat everything from her previous life as a passing cloud and smoke. Unfortunately, others might not let her off even if she thought this way. This was the current situation. If she lay dormant, others would bite her to death. If she wanted to live, she could only counterattack. Have Qiao Dongbua fucking come out. Qiao Mu repeated her words again, and she slightly tightened her grip on Xiao Ni's neck. It would truly be a pity if such a beautiful neck were to break. Miss, please stop. A young man walked out of the crowd. He looked to be around 25 or 26 years old. His appearance wasn't very good-looking and could only be considered decent. Arbor wasn't unfamiliar with this person at all. He was Qiao Chong, one of the top-ranked genius mystic cultivators in the main family. As a level 8 mystic cultivator, his talent was slightly inferior to his younger sisters. In her previous life, when Arbor was 9 years old, Xiao Anai was already a level 4 mystic cultivator when she was a little over 11 years old. Therefore, Xiao Anai was arrogant and complacent. Bearing the entire family's favor, she disliked this 9-year-old trash who hadn't even triggered her mystic meridians. And now, the 17-year-old Xiao Anai was already a level 7 mystic cultivator. Everyone present, including Xiao Chong, felt their hearts tremble when a little girl grabbed a level 7 mystic cultivator's neck the moment they met. The little girl in front of him looked like she was only 14 or 15 years old. What kind of cultivation was this? She must already be a level 10 great mystic cultivator. The Qiao clan's disciples couldn't see through Arbor's cultivation at all. They could only see a huge blue divine bird circling above her head. Their minds were a little muddled for a moment. It was common knowledge that only level 10 and above mystic cultivators could form contracts with mystic beasts. This little lady was already a level 10 great mystic cultivator at such a young age. His talent was simply astonishing. Arbor carried Xiao Anai effortlessly, as if he was carrying a hen, and strode into the Qiao residence. But she saw someone rush up to snatch Xiao Anai from her hands. Arbor coldly curled her lips at that person and broke one of Xiao Ni's fingers with a snap. After this, Xiao Ni's entire body trembled as if she was soaked in cold water. 3 of her fingers had already been broken, and no one dared to come up to snatch Xiao Anai from her hands. Chapter 885. Previously, Prince Imo had sent people to keep an eye on the Qiao family's main residence. The moment Xiao Dongbua and company made a move to kidnap Arbor's mother, the Hidden Night Pavilion knew about it. Therefore, when Arbor sent a message to the Hidden Night Pavilion, he received a quick reply saying that it was Xiao Dongbua who did it. However, before the Crown Prince could send people to rescue her, his Crown Princess had already knocked on their door. When Prince Imo received this news, he immediately jumped up from his seat. He didn't even bother with approving the memorials and directly tossed aside his cinnabar brush as he stood up, his face brimming with killing intent as he ordered, "Immediately summon Yu Xiu and bring 3,000 dragon saliva guards to the Qiao family's main residence." Hui Feng looked helpless. "You said that you would only go see the Crown Princess after taking care of matters. But can this be delayed?" "No, I have to go see Jojo immediately." He didn't want to delay a single minute. "You're bringing 3,000 dragon saliva guards to the Qiao estate to flatten the Qiao estate's main residence." Hui Feng rolled his eyes. "Don't worry. This subordinate dares to bet my head that our Crown Princess will definitely be fine. The unlucky one must be someone else. Hurry and make preparations," the Crown Prince roared at Hui Feng. The latter rubbed his nose and withdrew, feeling disinterested. Not long after, Yu Xiu, who received the news, personally led 3,000 dragon saliva guards to the palace's main entrance. When the great king received the news, he initially thought that something serious had happened. For example, someone was plotting a rebellion in the capital to endanger his throne. After asking around, he found out that the crown prince wanted to bring his iron-blooded personal guards to the Qiao family's main residence to rescue the crown princess's mother. He was so angry that he immediately threw away an inkstone. "Go, summon the crown princess to the main hall for this humble one. This humble one wants to have a good talk with her." This was his daughter-in-law's trivial matters. He couldn't keep letting his son interfere, right? What was a dignified crown prince who didn't attend to his proper duties and didn't think about national affairs, meddling in his daughter-in-law's family matters all day long? No wonder his old wife had been nagging at him recently, saying that the crown princess was a troublemaker who had led their good son astray. A father who loved his son dearly paced back and forth in the hall. He was determined to resist the fear in his heart. He was determined to find his daughter-in-law and have a good talk with her. Not long after, the manager eunuch, Gong Chang-en, ran in, panting, and knelt down on the ground. Reporting to the great king. The crown princess went to the Qiao estate in the evening and smashed the main gate. She fought her way in to save her mother. What? The great king's hand landed on the armrest, and he immediately felt the pain in his hand. He secretly rubbed his wrist. This crown princess is too much. She was the crown princess of a country. Why do you have no sense of propriety? What can't you send someone to do? Why did he have to personally come knocking on their door? Was this appropriate? Outrageous, outrageous, outrageous. Gong Chang-en. This servant is here. Gong Chang-en wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. He had a feeling that the great king was going to trick him. Sure enough, the great king angrily said, "Immediately go to the Chow estate's main residence and bring the crown princess back for this humble one. Just say that this humble one is summoning her immediately. Go quickly." "Yes, yes, great king, this servant will go right away." Gong Chang-an's face was bitter as he submissively retreated. Then, he wished he could howl at the sky. Whoa, why was it him again? During the New Year's banquet yesterday, he had clearly seen that the crown princess was a cold and independent person. How could she be moved by a servant like him? Chapter 886. He felt that he was asking for a beating by going to the Chow estate's main residence to find the crown princess. Wah! Gong Chang-an's face was mournful as he continuously tried to wipe the tears from the corners of his eyes and left. At the same time, Arbor lifted the pale-faced Chow An-I like a little chick and kicked over several Chow family disciples along the way. He walked directly to Chow Chong and impatiently said, "Go inform Chow Dongbua and tell him to fucking come out and see me. Otherwise, I'll immediately snap her neck." The Chow family can't afford to lose a genius mystic cultivator. Chow Chong's expression changed slightly, and he nodded and said, "I've already informed family head." At this time, a person hastily rushed over from the small path and casually saluted Arbor before haughtily raising his head. "Miss, family head invites you to the main hall." Ah! Chow An-I only felt that her neck was about to be snapped. Terror and fear flashed through her eyes, and she couldn't help but scream. She was really too scared. She felt that if she didn't do as the fiend in front of her said, her neck might be broken in the next moment. "Shameless, you still dare to put on airs in front of this lady? Tell him to come out and see me immediately. If he's a second late, I'll kill her." Arbor flew up and kicked the messenger boy's chest. That person rolled backward with a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth and a horrified expression. How could he still dare to put on airs? He hastily pissed his pants in terror and returned to report. At this time, Lightning and company had already gathered at the entrance. Following Chow Ni's shout, they rushed in and stood behind Arbor with baleful expressions. Arbor's eyes were filled with killing intent as he looked at the group of Chow family disciples who were continuously retreating. "I'll count to 3. If Chow Dongbua still doesn't show himself, I'll have her go to the Yellow Springs first and pave the way for you brats." Ah! Don't. Chow An-I shook her head in horror. She was truly scared, so scared that her body couldn't stop trembling. In the past 17 years, she had never felt so insignificant. It was as if that fiend woman could kill her with a single finger. 1. 2. Have mercy. Chow Dongbua suddenly rushed over from afar, with the two brothers Chow Zhongde and Chow Zhonghao by his side. Behind them were Mu Boming, Qin Guilu, and the patriarchs of the Dou and Hong families. After that, Omega Kotoku slowly walked over. His deep gaze landed on Arbor. The two young masters of the Dou family, Mu Boming's son, and the others also quickly followed behind their father. Their gazes all landed on Arbor with some astonishment. Arbor's lips curved slightly as he mocked, "Chow Dongbua, you coward, so you've actually invited a lot of helpers." Chow Dongbua's face instantly turned red. Chow Zhongde said angrily, "Watch your tone. This is your granduncle." Arbor's scattering meteors flew out, directly hitting Chow Zhongde's chest. The latter was immediately shocked, and at the same time he leaned back. The profound energy around his body had already protected his vitals. But with two pops, two small nails still pierced into his body, causing Chow Zhongde to furrow his brows in pain as his entire body trembled. Arbor grabbed Chow Ni's collar and fiercely struck the back of her head. His freaking strength made Second Do and the other's eyelids involuntarily twitch. Xiao and I abruptly knelt down with a wretched cry. Arbor grabbed the back of her collar, and with a rip, Xiao and I felt a chill in front of her chest. Her lapel had actually been torn open in front of everyone. This chapter is a gift. End of chapter 7. I'm going to eat. Chapter 887. Arbor coldly stared at Xiao Dongbua and said, I want to see my mother. Otherwise, I'll hang her naked body at the city gate. Let's see if your old Xiao family still wants this old face. You! Xiao Zhongde was so angry that he leaned back, and he almost vomited blood from his throat. He had truly never seen such a ruthless little girl. How should he put it? She didn't even give people any time to react, and suddenly, the entire situation took a sharp turn to the point where it was irreversible. They were all old people, but they were actually led by the nose by a little girl with just a few words. Not to mention that Xiao Zhongde was angered to death, Xiao Dongbua was even more furious. Arbor! How dare you! Bang! Arbor's hand viciously chopped at the back of Xiao Ni's neck, and with another ripping sound, Xiao and I screamed and cried. She only felt that the clothes on her upper body were almost completely torn apart by that savage girl. If you continue to consider, your genius granddaughter will be exposed naked in front of everyone. If you dare to make a move on Xiao and I again, see how I'll use the same method to deal with your mother. Xiao Zhongde shouted. A sharp light flashed in Arbor's eyes. A dagger instantly appeared in her hand, and she cut off half of Xiao Ni's ear. Who dares to touch my mother? I'll let his entire family die without a burial ground. Xiao Dongbua, you coward. Prepare to let everyone in your Xiao estate wash their necks clean and wait. Die! Is this your fate? Arbor shouted sternly. Qing Luan, who felt her emotional fluctuations, screeched in the air, and then spat out a mouthful of dense ice mist in the direction of Xiao Dongbua and the others. Xiao Dongbua was overwhelmed with shock, and he hurriedly grabbed his two sons and retreated. The stone floor beneath their feet was instantly covered by a layer of ice mist, and several cracks appeared. Dad, Dad, save me! Dad! Xiao and I screamed shrilly as she lay half-sprawled on the ground, half of her face dripping with blood. Her half-naked body trembled uncontrollably, and she stretched out her hands to pull at the air in front of her. She screamed shrilly, Grandpa, save me, Grandpa! She's crazy, crazy! Save me, save! Xiao Mu picked up Xiao Ni's head and grabbed her hair that was as disheveled as withered grass. She then dragged Xiao and I a few steps forward. Arbor pointed the bloody dagger at Xiao Dongbua and the others. Drawing a semicircle, he roared with a cold expression, I want to see my mother. Now! Everyone looked at her in shock. Perhaps they had never seen a young lady who could be so ruthless. Half of her face was splattered with Xiao Ni's blood, but her pair of clear, cold moon-like eyes emitted a terrifying light. Crown Princess, calm down. I can assure you that family head Xiao didn't make things difficult for your mother. Mu Boming hurriedly stretched out a hand and said, let go of Miss Xiao first, she. Shut up. I didn't catch your mother. What kind of cynical remarks are you spouting? Xiao Mu's bloody dagger was about to stab Xiao Ni's head again. Xiao Zhongde was so scared that his face was drained of all color. He jumped up in fear and trepidation. Bring him. Hurry and bring him out. Xiao Dongbua said angrily with a purple face, why you little bastard, why you actually dared to be so heavy-handed to your clan sister. I am going to expunge your name from the clan. Arbor shot him a cold glance. Chapter 888. Then, she grabbed Xiao Ni's hair and turned around. Her pale face was stained with blood, but it couldn't hide her elegant and refined features. Ha! Arbor sneered and looked at Xiao Dongbua mockingly. Old thing. Do you think I care? Jojo. A weak call came from the corridor. Xiao Mu grabbed the bloodied Xiao Ni and turned around. When she saw Wei Ziqin running over from the corridor, her eyes suddenly brightened. Lightning quickly led people to help Wei Ziqin and looked at the people around Wei Ziqin warily. Jojo, it's Jojo. It really is Jojo. Arbor's gaze moved to Wei Ziqin's side. Looking at the familiar face, she couldn't help but be stunned. Sixth aunt? Sixth uncle? Yes. Sixth Aunt Xiao and Sixth Uncle Qiao nodded and looked at her with a smile. Then, they looked uneasily at Xiao and I in her hands. Xiao Mu's gaze then shifted to a tall and frivolous woman beside the two people. Your sister Xiaoya? Arbor looked at Xiaoya and asked hesitantly. Xiaoya nodded at her and forced a smile on her cold face. Jojo, long time no see. Wei Ziqin was brought to Arbor by Lightning and the others. Only then did Xiao Mu release her grip on Xiao and I and carelessly wipe her bloody hands on her skirt. She then tugged on her mother's sleeve. Mom, are you okay? Silly child, what could happen to mother? Wei Ziqin looked at her daughter and couldn't help but feel sorry for her. Then let's go. Arbor nodded. Father, father. Qiao and I crawled a few steps forward and crawled to Qiao Zhongda's side in a sorry state. Kill her, kill this lunatic. Father. Father. Arbor abruptly turned his head, and a ferocious glint flashed across his eyes. He stepped forward and stepped on Qiao and I. Hey, Jojo, Jojo. Qiao Lu's aunt hurriedly cried out and carefully soothed her emotions. You should let Miss Qiao and I go. After all, we are all family members. Arbor sent Joni flying with a kick, and she landed in front of her father with a bang. Qiao Dongbua was so angry that his entire body trembled. Arbor, from today onwards, your name is removed from the clan. You are no longer a member of the Qiao family. Qin Guelu knitted his brows. Wei Ziqin's body trembled. She turned around abruptly and roared, Qiao Dongbua. What right do you have? How dare you? They actually wanted to remove her daughter from the clan? How could a girl whose name was removed from the list still have a good reputation? Was he trying to force her young lady to die? Look at what your girl has done. Bitch! Qiao Zhongda roared angrily as he bent down to support his trembling daughter, Qiao and I. Look at what she's done to Qiao and I. Bitch! Removed from the list. She should be removed from the list. Family head Xiao, you better think carefully before you act. Omega Kotoku glanced coldly at Xiao Dongbua, and the iciness in her eyes made Xiao Dongbua shudder involuntarily. Xiao Dongbua didn't sincerely want to remove Arbor from the list. He was eager to bring such a talented little evildoer back to the Qiao family. But now, he was quite enraged by Arbor's resolute attitude. Since he couldn't obtain such a talent, he would destroy this little girl at all costs. Sir Qin, this is our Qiao estate's family matter. Please don't interfere, Xiao Dongbua said, and he turned to shout at Arbor, Arbor, do you know your crime? Chapter 889. You know your old mother's crime, idiot. Arbor said indifferently, your Qiao family has already started to rot from the bones. You can take a look at the things you've raised and see for yourself what kind of good-for-nothing things you've raised. I wouldn't want such a rotten and disgusting family even if you gave it to me. Arbor reached out to support his mother and coldly glanced back at them. Why are you vermin the Qiao family's main family? Are you qualified? Look at your ugly faces, each one of you thinks your faces are bigger than the sun. What a joke. My Arbor father and mother, from today onwards, will open their own family ancestral hall and write their own genealogy. They will break away from your rotten family. Qiao Zhongbang is the Qiao family's first family head. As for you, you're a bunch of little reptiles who are only fit to live in dark corners. You'll be like flies and dogs for your entire life, and in the end, you'll be replaced by the new Qiao family. Wei Ziqin's eyes widened slightly as she looked up at her daughter. Such a dazzling little girl, yet at this moment, her body seemed to be burning like a blazing sun. The color was so bright and translucent that it was almost impossible for everyone to look directly at her. Second Do's pupils constricted, and he subconsciously clenched his fingers tightly. Suddenly, second young Master Do felt his sleeves move, and he turned to look at his older brother. Seeing his older brother's slightly inquiring gaze, a sense of powerlessness surfaced in second Do's heart in a split second. He was a smart person, so he could clearly feel eldest Miss Chow's hostility toward the Do family. It was a terrifying thing to have such an enemy who was rapidly growing. Perhaps he should go back and sort out his thoughts. Then, he would find an opportunity to ask Miss Chow how the Do family had offended her. Child. Wei Ziqing's eyes were dyed with a layer of moisture, and she reached out to gently pull her daughter into her embrace. Let's go home. Slut. Qiao Zhongde pointed at the backs of Wei Ziqing and her daughter as he angrily reprimanded, "Don't come back after leaving the Qiao family. You think being expelled from the family is a glorious thing? Soon, you'll experience how many people will ridicule you for being expelled from the family." Boom! The door of the Qiao estate, which was already in tatters, was completely smashed into pieces by the violent impact. 3,000 heavily armored dragon saliva guards quickly surrounded the entire Qiao residence under Yu Shou's lead. The swarm of soldiers ran into the Qiao residence in unison, splitting into several groups and rushing into the front hall and back rooms in a well-trained manner, quickly taking control of the various forces. If anyone resists, they will be punished for the crime of disrespect and executed on the spot. A cold voice came from outside the house, filled with a murderous aura. Mo Lian's tall figure walked out of the broken door. He saw Jojo at first glance and hurried to Arbor's side. Mo Lian. It was only at this moment that Xiao Mu's taut nerves relaxed slightly. She also quickly ran over and was pulled into the man's embrace. Jojo, are you okay? Mo Lian saw that she was covered in blood, and his heart couldn't help but beat faster. He anxiously grabbed her small hand and looked her up and down. I'm fine. It's all that idiot Xiao Ni's blood. It was only now that Xiao Mu looked up at him, feeling aggrieved. Mo Lian, they captured my mother, yet I'm not allowed to retaliate? Chapter 890. They said that I was cruel to Qiao and I and removed my name from the Qiao family's genealogy. I don't care. Arbor stubbornly says with red eyes, I'll have my father build his own ancestral hall. In the future, I'll be the rightful eldest miss of the Qiao family. What do you say? Lian. Arbor buries himself in her chest, making a muffled sound. Good. A trace of ruthlessness flits through Mo Lian's eyes. She looks up at Xiao Dongbua and the others and roars, "Where are the crown prince's personal attendants?" Xiao Mu leaned against his side and reached out to hug his waist, nuzzling her small head into his embrace. She could clearly feel the man's breathing quickening. That was the blood that was burning due to his anger gradually heating up. Boom! Over 100 personal attendants stepped forward, raising the sabers in their hands and shouting in unison, "Present." The capital's Qiao family has arrested the Marchioness for no reason. They have committed a great crime of disrespect to the crown princess. Everyone in the capital's Qiao family is to be detained. Wait for the Supreme Court's approval. What? Qiao Dongbua's entire body trembles. Just as he's about to resist, he hears the crown prince's icy voice ring out, "If there's resistance, regardless of gender or age, kill them on the spot." The Qiao family's children immediately cry out. Qiao Dongbua's shoulders instantly slump, his hands loosening as a guard presses a set of mystic energy shackles on him. His eyes are red as he says angrily, "Your Highness. You can't do this. Your Highness. If you don't want the Qiao family's close to 300 people to all die, then shut up for us." Mo Lian coldly sweeps a glance at Qiao Dongbua, leaving behind a sentence that makes everyone in the Qiao family tremble in fear, "You're already no longer us wife's clansmen. There's no need for us to be polite to you." Qiao Zhongde immediately goes limp on the ground. His previous clamoring and cursing all seemed so petty and laughable. A tiny Chow family wanting to oppose the powerful imperial court is undoubtedly like striking a rock with an egg. They'll die without an intact corpse. In a split second, the sounds of people being arrested, berated, and beaten mixed together. I only want Mom to live a bit more comfortably, Xiao Mu said dryly as she snuggled up to Mo Lien in low spirits. Don't worry, they won't have the chance to do anything to Mother. Mo Lien sent the mother and daughter back to the Marquis of Jiayuan's estate. Wei Ziqin and her daughter were whispering in the car. When I first saw Qiao Laolu and sister-in-law, I was also shocked. Wei Ziqin held her daughter's small hand and told her in detail what happened after she was kidnapped to the Qiao family. Qiao Dongbua didn't make things difficult for me. I even asked the doctor to treat my wounds. Wei Ziqin shook her head and said, he probably didn't even think that you would have such a huge reaction and almost overturn the entire Qiao estate. They said that they wanted me to stay with the main family for a period of time. So they specifically asked sixth sister-in-law to accompany me. When I saw Lao Lu and sister-in-law's family, I was genuinely happy. Sigh, but I didn't expect that the two of them were helping Qiao Dongbua persuade me to stay. They even wanted me to persuade you to return to the main family. Wei Ziqin shook her head, not knowing what to say. After all, so many years had passed, and people's hearts were fickle. It wasn't strange that Lao Lu and sixth sister-in-law had changed because of the ways of the world. Previously, she had asked the husband and wife how they had survived all these years and how they had come to the main family. The two of them were silent and didn't intend to tell her at all. Wei Ziqin saw that the two of them had grown distant with her and didn't treat her as one of their own, so she didn't ask anymore. Chapter 891. Xiaoya used to be a child who loved to smile, but now, she was abnormally cold when they met. Wei Ziqin felt that even her smile toward her was a bit forced. After all, they were old neighbors of Quoto village. Seeing them become so unfamiliar, Wei Ziqin didn't feel very good. Mom, don't think so much. Arbor was rather open-minded as she held her mother's hand and said, there are some changes that we can't stop no matter what. Wei Ziqin wiped the corners of her eyes and nodded. She was just a bit regretful. Mother and daughter returned to the Marquis of Jiayuan's estate under Prince Mo's escort. Just as they got off the carriage, they were stopped by a series of loud shouts. Wei Ziqin and Arbor paused and turned to look. They saw the great king's steward eunuch, Gong Chang'an, striding over to them on his short, chubby legs. This old servant greets the crown prince and crown princess. Marchioness. Gong Chang'an wiped his sweat and panted heavily. Only the heavens knew that he had rushed to the Qiao estate's main residence to deliver the great king's verbal edict to the crown princess, only to end up empty-handed. Afterwards, he could only bitterly rush back to the Marquis of Jiayuan's estate, and only then did he manage to intercept the crown princess. Mo Lien glanced at him coldly. What are you doing here? Gong Chang'an was a shrewd old man. The moment he heard the crown prince's clearly displeased tone, he knew that things were going to be bad. However, he was burdened with the damned mission that the great king had given him, so he had no choice but to brace himself and face the crown prince. He said obsequiously, Your Highness, this old servant is here on the great king's orders. He urgently summons the crown princess to the palace for an audience. Urgently summons? How urgent did it have to be to make Gong Chang'an, this old fellow, sweat profusely? Prince Mo coolly swept the old eunuch a glance. What's the matter? What's the hurry? Tomorrow. Jojo needs to go back and rest. Gong Chang'an immediately knelt on the ground with a plop, Your Highness. The great king is urgently summoning the crown princess. This matter cannot be delayed. If this old servant fails to bring the crown princess back to the palace, woo-woo. This old man actually cried as he wiped his face with tears streaming down his face. Crown Prince Mo pursed his lips tightly, his expression displeased. Arbor didn't care. He tugged at Mo Lien's sleeve and said, Forget it, don't make things difficult for him. It won't take long for me to follow him into the palace. While they were talking, Father Qiao, who had gone to the capital office to report the case, happened to return. Accompanying him was the capital governor. The two hurriedly dismounted and went forward to greet the crown prince. When Lord Pang saw that Wei Ziqin was safe and sound, he immediately heaved a sigh of relief and repeatedly congratulated her. Lord Pang, the suspects have all been taken into custody by the Supreme Court. I'll need you to follow up on this matter. Mo Lien instructed indifferently. Of course. Don't worry, Your Highness. Arbor comforted his mother with a few words and had his parents return home first. He followed the crown prince into the palace. On the way, Mo Lien's brows were tightly knitted. Seeing this, the little fellow couldn't help but frown as well. She reached out to stroke his brows. Mo Lien snapped out of his daze and saw her adorable action. He couldn't help but chuckle and hold her little hand. You really don't want me to go with you? No need. Arbor twisted his little hand and reached out 2 fingers, one on the left and one on the right, to smooth out the frown between his brows. Mo Lien burst into laughter. Arbor tilted his head and suddenly asked, Mo Lien, can your father take a beating? Gong Chang'an, who was sitting on the shaft of the carriage, didn't know why he heard the crown princess's words, but his heart froze for no reason. Chapter 892. The crown princess has arrived. The great king Mo Lei, who was pacing back and forth in front of the main hall, suddenly perked up. He straightened his posture and turned around with a cold expression. Arbor greets the great king. Arbor walked into the spacious main hall without consulting anyone and performed a standard salute in the great king's direction. Mo Lei's lips curled into a smile as he stared sharply at the girl in front of him. He suddenly asked, Crown Princess, do you know why we summoned you here so urgently? Arbor looked up and returned the great king's gaze with neither servility nor arrogance. She just stood there quietly and didn't say anything, only waiting for the great king to continue speaking. Mo Lei simply had nowhere to vent his anger. As expected, his old wife's nagging wasn't wrong. Facing this expressionless stoic face, he didn't know why his mood started to sour. Do you know that back then, it was the crown prince who begged us and knelt for 3 days and 3 nights without getting up? Only then did us obtain the position of crown princess for you. Otherwise, with your status, there's no way you can become the crown princess. Arbor directly swept a glance at the great king. What are you bragging about? Would Mo Lien do such a cowardly thing? He should be the one who took the written imperial edict and asked you to directly knock it on the table. The great king was so angry that he was jumping up and down. Nonsense. He was already about to explode from anger on the inside. This son of his was indeed a swindler. He actually said everything to his wife. He made his father lose face in front of his daughter-in-law. Isn't that so? Darling Qiao was angry and said whatever was on her mind. That night, he told me himself that I'm already an adult. We have to settle the marriage before the coming-of-age ceremony. Marriage isn't scary. It's just a formality. In the future, we'll be husband and wife. The great king's eyes bulged. Was this how his son tricked a little girl? What formality? Marriage is just a formality, ha. Then, that night, he entered the palace to ask you for the imperial edict. The more darling Qiao spoke, the angrier she became. She glared at the great king and said, You big liar. He even said that he would kneel for 3 days and 3 nights. He hadn't even been in the palace for 2 hours when the imperial edict came down. Don't you remember what you've done? The old great king really couldn't remember. But it was really embarrassing to be exposed by her daughter-in-law like this. Furthermore, what liar! He was the great king. Preposterous. I summoned you here today to tell you. The old great king flung his sleeves angrily and said, It's not easy for you to get the status of crown princess. You should cherish it. Look at all the trouble you've caused recently. Even the crown prince's reputation has been tarnished by you. Gong Chang'an followed behind the great king and carefully reached out to tug at the great king's sleeve. indicating for the great king to look at the crown princess's darkened expression. Although our Seekong planet's folkways are more ferocious. But as the crown princess, you must uphold your morals and scrupulously abide by a woman's duty. You mustn't easily get into a fight with others over trivial matters. Now, you even went so far as to destroy your own family. You have to trouble the crown prince to step forward and resolve your troubles every time. Crown princess, I'm warning you seriously. If there's a next time and you damage the crown prince's reputation, I'll definitely. Smack! Suddenly, a blue immobilization talisman was abruptly stuck to the great king's forehead, instantly causing a certain someone's gesticulating hand to freeze in midair. The great king's face was petrified. Chapter 893. Your Highness, Your Highness, Your Highness the Crown Prince, it's bad. The junior eunuch sent by Gong Chang and ran into the Eastern Palace in a panic and looked around the empty palace. The junior royal maid from the Eastern Palace followed in and said with a fierce expression, I already said that His Highness isn't in the bedchamber. How dare you barge in here? Where did His Highness go? The junior eunuch was about to cry. This servant was sent by Manager Gong. This servant earnestly requests that His Highness make a trip to the king's palace. The junior royal maid pursed her lips. How can we, as servants, care where the master goes? You can just report the truth to Manager Gong. The junior eunuch said with a sullen expression, this servant has an extremely urgent matter to report to His Highness. The great king is still waiting for His Highness to return and rescue him. What happened to the great king? Hui Feng couldn't pretend that he didn't hear anything anymore, so he appeared next to the junior eunuch and asked with an indifferent expression. Wah! The junior eunuch wiped his tears and said, the great king has been immobilized in the main hall by Her Highness the Crown Princess with an immobilization talisman. Even now, he still can't move. It was almost dusk, and it was almost time to light the lanterns for dinner, but the great king was still immobilized in the main hall in the same posture. Only now did the great king himself start to panic. Gong Chang and quickly ordered someone to invite His Highness the Crown Prince to resolve this urgent matter. At this moment, the Crown Prince was hiding in the bedchamber's secret room and crafting a golem by hand. Combined with some guidance from the Tianji treasure blueprint, the Crown Prince's improved golem was more agile and nimble than before. Moreover, this golem could already start learning some simple mystic techniques and was about the level of a normal level 4 or level 5 mystic cultivator. This was a great leap in golem crafting. If he wanted to create a golem above level 10 mystic cultivator, he still needed to study it continuously. When Prince Mo heard Huifeng's report, he buried himself in his work and didn't even look up. I didn't hit him, I only stuck an immobilization talisman on him. He'll be able to move when the time is up, so what's the rush? Huifeng's mouth twitched as he silently lit a candle for the old great king in his heart. Look at this troublesome son of his. How biased was his heart? He had long known that the great king would definitely come to his eastern palace to ask for reinforcements, so he had entered the secret chamber early in the morning to slack off. Your Highness, do you think we should go to the king's palace to express our sincerity? The crown prince aloofly glanced at Hui Feng. Jojo merely stuck an immobilization talisman on him. I think it's just right to give him a basin of ice water to cool down. This great king had nothing better to do, so he kept bothering his wife. I won't read the memorials for the next 2 days. Send them to the great king. The crown prince snorted. I think he has too much free time. An hour later, Hui Feng brought back the latest news from the king's palace. The crown princess ordered servants to set up a small table and started eating dinner in front of the petrified great king. Mo Lian's slender hands abruptly paused in the middle of fiddling with the golem, but she then continued working as if nothing had happened. When fourth Princess Mo Shuang arrived, she saw this scene. The woman known as the crown prince consort was eating slowly in front of the king, who was standing stiffly in front of him. Royal father! Royal father! Mo Shuang made a big fuss as she walked forward. She first hugged the great king's leg and wailed bitterly, as if the Great King had died. The old Great King's expression looked as if he had eaten shit. If he could move right now, he would probably kick this daughter out of the hall. After Emo Shuang finished crying, she abruptly turned around and glared viciously at Arbor. Chapter 894. How dare you use witchcraft to harm the Great King? Guards, guards! Gong Chang and hastily walked up with a long face and hastily waved his hand. Fourth princess, don't cause trouble here. Hurry and return first. Fourth princess Emo Shuang was enraged. Gong Chang and, how dare you chase this princess out? Gong Chang and really wanted to cry. He was clearly protecting his master loyally and doing all of this for the princess's sake. How could the princess be a match for the crown princess with such a dumb brain? You still dare to make a fuss here? The crown princess will teach you a lesson in a bit. Fourth princess Emo Shuang walked to Arbor's table with a dark expression. She stretched out her leg and looked like she was about to kick over her small table, but Arbor pressed down with one hand and firmly gripped the table. You! Emo Shuang was enraged, but she couldn't resist Arbor's heavy pressure. She loosened her grip and staggered back a few steps, her eyes bulging as she cursed, as expected of a bold woman. She dares to be so impudent in the Great King's palace. Gong Chang and walked to the fourth princess with a bitter expression. Princess, you had better return first. No, I have something important to report to royal father. Emo Shuang grabbed Gong Chang An's collar and angrily said, hurry and have this woman dispel the witchcraft for the Great King. Gong Chang An's expression became even more bitter. Your Highness, are you joking? Her Highness the Crown Princess even dares to discipline the Great King, let alone a lowly servant like me. What use would I be if I went up? Wouldn't I be sending a lamb to the tiger's den? Emo Shuang turned her head and glared at Arbor, but she couldn't do anything about it. Seeing this crown princess leisurely eating without even looking up, Emo Shuang felt a bit stifled. She was clearly the princess of the golden branch and jade leaves, all right. Why could this crown princess be so much more unscrupulous than her, a princess? Another incense stick of time passed. The corner of Huifeng's mouth twitched as he ran back and reported the latest battle situation to His Highness the Crown Prince. The Great King can finally move. He just called the secret guards to arrest the crown princess and interrogate her. Unexpectedly, the crown princess flicked her sleeve and took out handfuls of blue body immobilization talismans. She whispered to the Great King, here are 100 body securing talismans. One talisman will secure you for 2 hours. How many days do you think you will have to eat dirt in this hall if I use them on you? Mo Lien was stunned for a moment before laughing out loud. This was indeed something that his Jojo would do. What happened next? The Great King sent the steward eunuch, Gong Chang'an, to respectfully escort the crown princess out of the palace. It's said that when Gong Chang'an left, he ran faster than a rabbit, practically sending off the crown princess as if he was sending off the god of plague. Huifeng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. That was true. He summoned the crown princess to the king's palace in all seriousness for a lecture, but the Great King was inexplicably punished to stand for 2 hours. In any case, the Great King must be feeling very tired right now, right? Mo Lien walked out of the secret room with a hearty laugh and was full of praises. I'm relieved that Jojo didn't suffer any losses. Here, I'll go see royal father right now. Crown Prince, can you be any more deceitful? Huifeng looked up at the sky speechlessly. Your Highness, I think it's best if you don't go over right now. The Great King is currently in a terrible rage and reprimanding the fourth princess. Why did she enter the palace? Prince Mo's brows involuntarily creased at the mention of fourth sister Mo Shuang. The fourth princess entered the palace to beg for a consort. What? Crown Prince Mo momentarily thought that he had misheard. Wait. I haven't finished yet, it's not early today. Chapter 895. the fourth princess came to the palace to beg for a prince consort. Huifeng rolled his eyes and repeated his words. Beg for what prince consort? Mo Lian frowned and paused in her steps. This Mo Shuang married the Marquis of Su An's estate's old third 7 years ago, but she was unwilling to be left alone after the marriage. She brought a gigolo home every few days and quarreled with the prince consort all day long, which ultimately led to a peaceful divorce. In the end, she refused to let the prince consort off and forced him to his death. Her conduct was simply shameless. Mo Lian disdained to speak with her, so she didn't pay much attention to this woman's affairs. Huifeng grinned as if he had heard an interesting piece of news. He cheerfully said to Mo Lian, the fourth princess begged the great king to bestow the Qin estate's eldest young master to her as her prince consort. The great king rained down a torrent of abuse on the fourth princess, ha ha ha. Who? Mo Lian truly thought that she was hearing things. Who was his crippled idiot fourth sister, who didn't have a trace of mystic energy and couldn't lift a single thing, thinking about? Cough, this subordinate also knows that it's rather inconceivable. But the princess claimed that she was immediately stunned by eldest young Master Qin after seeing him at the New Year's banquet 2 days ago. After missing him for 2 days, she couldn't bear the loneliness and ran into the palace to beg the great king to bestow a marriage upon her. Ha 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 ha. Mo Lian actually laughed maniacally. When Huifeng saw that such a trivial matter had actually amused his master, he was immediately amused as well. He simply leaned forward and vividly described what he had seen and heard in the king's palace. Your Highness, you don't know. The fourth princess hugged the great king's leg and was dragged by the great king to wipe the floor, but she refused to let go. She cried and yelled that she had to have the great king bestow a marriage upon her and bestow the Qin estate's eldest young master to her as her prince consort. She even said, cough. If this daughter can't marry Mr. Qin and receive his nourishment, this daughter will definitely wither and wither like winter vegetation. This daughter will die. Huifeng stifled the anger in his throat as he shouted this. Mo Lian was startled for a moment before she started laughing maniacally. In the dead of the night, the moon hung above the trees. In Crane Garden. When Second Qin heard the messenger's report, he curled his lips into a rare mischievous smile. That's great. That's good, then perhaps I'll have a princess sister-in-law in the future. Who told him to flirt with flirtatiousness? Look, who did he flirt? What was my eldest brother's reaction? The man was about 27 or 28 years old and had an honest look on his face. He respectfully lowered his head and said, eldest young master didn't have much of a reaction when he heard the news. He was just stunned for a moment before he smiled and said that there was no need to worry about it. On the other hand, Miss Ping, from eldest young master's court, was very angry. She cursed at fourth princess behind closed doors and even smashed quite a few things. Omega Kotoku pursed her lips and nodded absent-mindedly. Wang Chung, have you done what I asked you to do? Reporting to master, Wang Chung has done it. Omega Kotoku nodded slowly. She gripped her cup and icily said, if it's mine, then it definitely can't escape. Wang Chung stole a glance at his master. He felt like his master's dark and serene eyes seemed to flicker with the water of a frigid pond, as sharp and piercing as an icy precipice. Wang Chung didn't dare to look any longer and quickly lowered his head. Omega Kotoku waved her hand at him, and Wang Chung silently disappeared. That night, Blue Mountain Courtyard's maidservant Xiang Yuan was feverish and muddle-headed from the fever, alarming manager Kai Wei. Chapter 896. After Arbor returned home safe and sound, she first reported to her parents before washing up and going to bed. She felt exhausted from today's torment, so she fell asleep the moment she laid down on the bed. Early the next morning, Arbor was informed of Duan Yu's visit as soon as she got up. Duan Yu, this guy, must have come because of yesterday's incident. Arbor wiped her face, changed into a set of clothes, and ran to the main hall to see him. As soon as she entered, she saw that guy pacing back and forth in the hall with his hands behind his back. Duan Yu, Arbor called out softly in a crisp voice. The young man turned around, and the moment he saw her, his pair of peach blossom eyes suddenly lit up. Jojo, are you all right? Did you get hurt? Duanyu looked at her anxiously and asked, I heard that you were summoned into the palace by the old great king after returning yesterday. What did he do to you? Reprimanded? Punished? Of course it's fine. Arbor pursed her lips. When she recalled the great king's sullen expression yesterday, she wanted to laugh on the inside. Emolien's father was just a bit lustful, muddle-headed, and lazy, but there was nothing else. She was just playing a harmless joke on the old man, so she didn't know how traumatized the old man was. I just knew that Jojo would be fine, Duanyu said happily. Duanyu cheerfully exclaimed as he reached out to grab her sleeve. Oh why did you barge into the Chow family's residence by yourself? You should have at least dragged me along. I can also join in the fun, right? Arbor nodded. All right then, I'll call you if there's a fight next time. That's right. Duanyu nodded with a grin. Jojo. Do you have any activities for the Lantern Festival? I heard there will be a Lantern Festival that day, so let's go together. Lantern viewing. Arbor was dispirited. Emicham, apparently there's no curfew that night. We can play until very late. Duanyu looked at her with blinking eyes. It's very fun. There will be people weaving in and out, praying and releasing lanterns, and all kinds of activities. How about we go and have some fun together? Yay! 2 cheers suddenly sounded. Sister, let's go play. Jolin and Jonathan suddenly popped out of the door and ran excitedly to Arbor. The little monk followed behind them and looked at Arbor with sparkling eyes. Benefactress, is the Lantern Festival that fun? When he used to live in a temple, he would only celebrate festivals with his teacher and father. He had never seen a Lantern Festival before. He had never seen such a lively and bustling scene. Arbor waved at the small monk. The little monk pattered over to her and raised his little head to look at her. Benefactress? Kong, you really want to go? The little monk tilted his head and thought for a while. In the end, he nodded heavily and said, I want to go. Master had said that monks should not lie. Yes, he was an honest man. Arbor patted Kong's head. All right, let's go together. All right. Duanyu's mouth twitched. He didn't expect to have to drag along 3 little radishes. Jojo, 10 days after the Lantern Festival, the 8 great patrician families will hold a competition between disciples below the age of 20 and above the age of 13. Can you come and watch the competition then? Arbor turned to look at Duanyu. I will participate in the competition. The Chow family that represented the new generation. Duanyu immediately jumped up in excitement. Really? Then you must properly beat up those little monkeys from the Duan family for me. Ha 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 ha. Chapter 897. The two were chatting animatedly when Chunying hurried over with 2 maidservants. She curtsied when she saw Arbor and Duanyu. Miss, young Master Duan. Is something the matter? If it wasn't, Chunying wouldn't purposely interrupt her conversation with Duanyu. Yes. Apologies, miss, there's someone outside who claims to be the Marquis of Su An's estate's 5th young master, Hu Yukong. He's been clamoring for miss to compensate for the medicinal soup and insists on staying in our estate, saying he wants miss to personally tend to his injuries. Our people chased him away twice, but he refused to leave. At this time, he's already attracted a lot of onlookers. This servant didn't handle it properly and had no choice but to come and inform miss, Chunying said apologetically. Duanyu clenched his fists when he heard this. Hu Yukong, is it? This young master will go and meet him. I'll pay him for the medicine and serve him the medicine. Arbor couldn't help but find it funny and tugged at his belt. It's nothing. It's just a person with a bad brain that I met yesterday. I'll go out and take a look. I'll go too. Duan Yu was afraid that Arbor would be taken advantage of, so he quickly followed. Qiao Lin and Qiao Sun exchanged glances before quickly running out with the little monk. Who was it? Did they eat a bear's heart or a leopard's gall to come find trouble with their eldest sister? Didn't they know that their eldest sister was someone who could even backstab the great king? From sister's words, it seems like it's someone we met at Spring Dawn Garden yesterday. Qiao Lin blinked. Wow! It can't be that fool whose head was smashed by sister with a flower pot, right? Qiao Sun suddenly exclaimed. When Duan Yu heard this, he knew that there must be some marvelous story behind it. He quickly took out melon seeds, peanuts, and candies from his inner world and peddled them to the two brats to inquire about yesterday's events. After the Qiao Lin siblings each grabbed a handful of melon seeds and peanuts, they couldn't close their small mouths and poured out yesterday's events to Duan Yu. Arbor didn't care about what those people were muttering behind her. She directly walked to the door, and as soon as she walked out of the Marquis of Jiyuan's estate, she saw that oddball old fifth of the Marquis of Su An's estate rolling on the ground as he stubbornly held on to the heels of her father, Qiao Zhongbang. Qiao Zhongbang had an awkward expression on his face. He didn't know whether he should kick him flying with his heel or continue dragging him forward. What are you doing? Arbor looked at Hu Yukong speechlessly. When the latter saw her, his eyes quickly lit up. Then, he pointed at his own head and wailed, "Look at my head. It was smashed by you yesterday. The doctor said that something might go wrong. I don't care, you have to be responsible for my treatment. Otherwise, I'll just lie in front of your Marquis of Jiyuan's estate." Arbor gazed deeply at him. That gaze caused Hu Yukong to involuntarily shrink back, feeling somewhat guilty for no reason. Oh, she smashed his head with a flower pot yesterday, and now he's shamelessly sticking to her door. Duan Yu rolled up his sleeves and was about to step forward. I think that doctor was right. It's not that something might go wrong, but that something is wrong with you right now. What could go wrong with me? Hu Yukong was paralyzed on the ground as he swept a disdainful gaze at Duan Yu. Something wrong with your head. Come, come. I'll treat you. Duan Yu was about to step forward as he spoke. Hu Yukong rolled on the ground and hugged Qiao Zhongbang's heels as he wailed, Marquis, Marquis, murder. Marquis, someone wants to kill someone. Qiao Zhongbang restrained himself and abruptly used a bit of force to pull out his feet. Chapter 898. Stop making a fuss. Arbor shouted impatiently and waved her small hand at the two boy servants behind her. Help him up. Yes, Mississippi. The two servants quickly went up to support him. However, Hu Yukong refused to let go of Qiao Zhongbang's heel and even howled, What are you doing? Don't touch me. I said don't touch me. Damn it, a bunch of lowly servants, how dare you touch your lord Hu? Lord Marquis, save me, Lord Marquis. Qiao Zhongbang was truly embarrassed to death. Sorry to trouble this young master Hu, can you not embarrass yourself in front of the Marquis of Jiyuan's estate? If he was this young master Hu's father, he would probably want to tear him apart. How did the Hu family produce such an oddball son? Scram. Qiao Zhongbang sincerely forced this word out from between his teeth. How could he have known that he would be so unlucky? He was just about to head to the capital governor's office, but this oddball would pester him as soon as he stepped out of the gates. I don't care. You must compensate. Hu Yukong argued forcefully, you smashed my head. You must compensate me for my medical expenses and serve me wholeheartedly until I recover. Arbor suddenly smiled at him. This smile made Duan Yu's hair stand on end. What was going on? Why did his Jojo keep giggling foolishly at strange men? There was something wrong with this situation. Jojo, you aren't really going to take in this mentally ill guy, right? Duan Yu grabbed her small hand and earnestly dissuaded her, you mustn't. Look at how shameless he is, he clearly wants to cling to you. We don't even know what his motive is, so you mustn't bother with him. You'll lose if you nag at him. You're right. Arbor turned and nodded seriously at Duan Yu. After Duan Yu heaved a sigh of relief, he glanced over and saw the little girl leaping down the steps. She ran directly to Hu Yukong and yanked him down from her father's heels. Qiao Zhongbang let out a long sigh and hurriedly took a few steps back. He then looked at Hu Yukong suspiciously. This kid looks like a weakling. But just now, when he used all his strength to pull his heel, he actually couldn't pull it out? Miss Qiao, the cost of the medicine cannot be reduced by a single cent. Hu Yukong was pulled over by her, and he grumbled. What the hell are you talking about? Arbor slapped Hu Yukong's big head. Everyone's mouths twitched, and he rushed over. He grabbed Hu Yukong's face with his two small hands and ravaged it. Stop pretending. I know who you are. You must be Snake Beauty. Don't think that I won't be able to recognize you just because you've disguised yourself as the idiot of the Marquis of Su An's estate. Arbor kneaded and knocked on his face, directly treating his opponent's face like a glutinous rice ball. Hu Yukong's face became distorted in front of everyone. He grimaced in a strange manner and forced himself to say, more rebellious. Stop pinching, I'll let you pretend. Arbor punched Hu Yukong's chin. Grabbing his jet black hair, he punched the same spot 3 times in a row. Then, he took a closer look and muttered curiously, why isn't it dented? If the person in front of her was Snake Beauty, there would be a flaw exposed by shifting his form, twisting his bones, twisting his meridians, and violently punching the same spot, right? Could it be that she was overthinking it? Duan Yu truly sympathized with this Marquis of Su An's estate's old fifth. He raised his hand to cover his face, simply at a loss for words. Chapter 899. Xiao Sen and Xiao Lin each had their mouths agape, and it took a long time before they continued to munch on melon seeds. This guy who had his head smashed by a flower pot yesterday was truly quite miserable, and today, he was beaten to this state by sister. Arbor loosened her grip and carefully examined his chin. It didn't look like he had moved his bones anywhere. You really aren't the Snake Beauty? Arbor suspiciously glanced at the Marquis of Su An's estate's old fifth. She kept feeling that this person was a bit strange. Logically speaking, with his submissive personality, it was unlikely that he would dare to come find trouble with her. Even if he didn't know her before yesterday, it seemed like someone had already informed him of the Crown Princess's identity when she smashed his head. Someone like Hu Yukong, who didn't even dare to let out a fart when he saw His Highness the Crown Prince, still dared to come find the Crown Princess to quarrel. Cough! Arbor awkwardly loosened her grip. Just as she was about to reach out to straighten his disheveled collar, the Marquis of Su An's estate's fifth young master shrunk back with all his might and let out a tragic shriek. Don't come over, what are you doing? He covered his chest with both hands, and his eyes were wide as saucers. When he looked at Arbor, even Arbor couldn't resist looking down at her pair of spotlessly white hands. She really didn't want to do anything. Arbor coughed lightly and glanced at Hu Yukong in embarrassment. It's a misunderstanding, a misunderstanding, a misunderstanding. Young Master Hu, are you all right? Hu Yukong shrunk his neck and covered his chest as he shouted vehemently, you smashed my head yesterday. Today, you hit my chin hard. Tomorrow, you want to break my nose crooked. The day after tomorrow, you want to beat my eyes until they're bloodshot. Arbor twitched her mouth, and she quickly reached out to placate him. No, no, no. Don't come over. Young Master Hu shrunk back like a bird startled by the twang of a bow. Our dear Arbor's hand froze in mid-air just like that. On the other end, Duan Yu was already laughing uncontrollably. He held his forehead and turned his handsome face away, practically unable to bear looking directly at Hu Yukong's tragic and shocked face. How about this? I'll give you a bottle of healing pills. Take it and you'll be fine in 2 days. Give it to me. Hu Yukong angrily reprimanded him. Arbor was speechless, but he still took out a bottle of pills from his inner world and handed it to him. Hu Yukong hurriedly snatched it over, opened the bottle and sniffed it. Only then did his expression soften slightly as he muttered, the medicinal pills are not bad. Xiao Mu nodded. Then let's call it quits like this. No. Hu Yokong's expression was extremely ugly. You have to be responsible for treating my injuries. Otherwise, I wouldn't have left the Marquis of Jiayuan's estate. Even if this matter is reported to the Great King, you will still be the one at fault. Arbor. Qiao Zhongbang quickly stepped forward to smooth things over. How about this, young Master Hu? You go home first. No. Hu Yukong clutched his chest at once, looking like he was about to faint from suffocation. Don't think of chasing me out of the Marquis of Jiayuan's estate before my injuries recover. Arbor's head hurt from his quarreling, and he turned to Chunying to instruct, arrange for him to stay in the outer courtyard. In at most 3 days, his small injuries will be healed. Humph. Hu Yukong pursed his lips. When he followed the disdainful Chunying into the Marquis' estate's main entrance, he secretly peeked at Arbor's back. Why did you bring this person into the estate? Duan Yu asked unhappily. He couldn't even enter the inner courtyard, so who was this person so thick-skinned? Chapter 900. Arbor looked around before secretly pulling Duan Yu to the side and whispering, I suspect that there's something strange about this person. Did you just call him a snake beauty? Who is that? Duan Yu also couldn't resist asking in a hushed voice. A pervert. Arbor harumphed. A fellow that I especially want to beat up whenever I see her. Duan Yu's mouth twitched before he said with certainty, that person must be especially ugly. Unlike him, who was likable because of his good looks. Arbor nodded, and the two of them huddled together and muttered for a while. Qiao Zhongbang wanted to laugh as he watched from behind, so he coughed and said, Jojo, Dad is going to the capital governor's office and will return at noon. Arbor turned to look at Qiao Zhongbang. He knew that Dad must be going to follow up on the Qiao clan's matter, so he nodded and watched him leave. Jojo, then we'll make an appointment. I'll come pick you up in a few nights. After Duan Yu left with a wave of his paw, Arbor sent the 3 little radishes back to the estate and went to beautiful Vista Court to talk with her mother. It just so happened that her mother had finished giving out some orders and was free. When she saw her walking over, she happily waved at her. Jojo, you came at the right time. Mom just wanted to talk to you about something. What is it, Mom? Wei Ziqin pulled her daughter's hand and sat down on the side. Didn't the Qiao clan all go to jail? From Xiao Mo's words, it seems that they want to banish all of them from the capital. Mom was thinking that old 6th Qiao's family was implicated for no reason. I don't know if there's any way to bail them out. The Supreme Court hasn't passed a verdict yet. There's no verdict yet, Arbor said dryly. Mom, banishment isn't Imo Lien's idea, it's mine. I want all these people to disappear from my sight. Wei Ziqin's heart tightened. Then what about your grandmother? Arbor was expressionless. Does Dad also want to bail elderly lady out? Arbor didn't want to make himself feel wronged. This old lady was not much different from her previous life. She caused trouble all day long. Now that she had become like this, she could only blame herself. Alas! Wei Ziqin sighed. Although your grandmother disappointed your father, she was still your father's mother. Forget it, you don't have to worry about this matter. Let your father handle it himself. Arbor nodded noncommittally. Is there any way to get Xiao Laolu and his family out? Wei Ziqin asked again. If they don't have a place to stay, we can. Mom. Arbor shook his mother's hand. Don't worry about it. Don't even think about going through the trouble of bringing her back. A few years ago, you brought an old lady home to serve you all day long. Aren't you tired? Now, he had to get some clan relatives back to entertain them. After all, many years had passed, and it was hard to tell what was in a person's heart. It's not suitable for Qiao Laolu and his family of 3 to stay in our residence. Wei Ziqin glanced at her daughter and sighed helplessly. Daughter, we've been neighbors with your 6th uncle's family for so many years. Mom also hopes that they'll have a good life. Okay. Arbor nodded. I'll make arrangements for them. As for the others, Mom, you don't have to worry about them. Isn't it better to let them quickly stay far away from our home? If you're free, you can embroider flowers and raise plants. Isn't that better? Why do you have to bring back some ancestors to worship? Even if you don't find it tiring, I feel tired for you. All right. Wei Ziqing didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she looked at her daughter. Mom knows that you love your mother. Mom understands. Chapter 901. When it was close to noon, Prince Imo came to the Marquis of Jiayuan's estate on his own and picked up Arbor to head to the Supreme Court. On the way, he quietly told her, Royal Father's decree has already been passed down. Tomorrow, Qiao Dongbuo's group will be chased out of the capital. Arbor was currently leaning on him, her teeth gnawing on a piece of dried fruit. When she heard this, she looked up and pursed her lips. You hid from your dad yesterday and didn't see him. If you went today, how could your dad not speak ill of me to you? He probably poured out his grievances for the entire morning. Mo Lian laughed and wrapped his arms around her. He lowered his head and rested his chin on her head. Guess what Royal Father said to me? Wasn't it just complaining to you about how fierce I was? Arbor snorted and replied without thinking. That's not it. You definitely won't guess. When his dad saw him entering the palace to meet the emperor, he immediately jumped up from his throne in excitement and dryly said to him, Son, do you think you can buy anything for fun? In the future, buy less of those nonsensical talismans for your wife. You even bought so many of them. Can these talismans be eaten or what? After Mo Lian repeated it, he couldn't resist laughing first. The great king simply didn't expect that you drew all these talismans yourself. He even thought that I bought them for you. How about you draw a few talismans on the spot next time and scare him again? Is there such a sarcastic son like you? Arbor cast him a glance and inwardly cursed him for being a fraud. She reached out to tug on a lock of his inky hair and forcefully tugged. How is the new batch of ebony I asked Bailey Shi to polish coming along? It's already in the process of being shipped, right? It should arrive on the day of the Lantern Festival. Mo Lian looked down at her with a grin. Jojo, I heard that Duan Yu came to find you this morning. That's right. Arbor rolled his eyes at him. Why are you always sending your tail to follow me? I'll inform you as soon as there's something going on. I'm just worried about you, Mo Lian continued calmly. I heard that you smiled at old fifth of the Marquis of Suan's estate. Was she smiling? Arbor raised his hand to touch his cold little face and muttered to himself, I don't think so. I don't feel anything. He's smiling. Mo Lian nodded her head with certainty. Lightning, that fellow, even secretly described it. The crown princess suddenly smiled at the Marquis of Suan's residence's old fifth, like a spring breeze brushing against one's face, like 1,000 trees blooming. The Marquis of Suan's estate's old fifth was momentarily stunned. Look. Lightning's description was so accurate. What other information did he not have? Oh. That might have been a smile. She didn't have any impression of it. Suddenly, he felt his body lighten. The little fellow who was chewing on a piece of dried fruit was suddenly lifted up and turned around. They looked at each other face to face. What are you doing? Our dear Qiao Mu's small face rapidly flushed red at such a close distance, practically sticking to his face. Smile. Ha! Arbor was baffled. He suddenly leaned closer, so close that she could clearly see his long, curly eyelashes fluttering in the wind as they blinked. Smile. His breath completely enveloped hers, causing her to be completely flustered. She didn't even know where to place her small hands and feet. He was so close that her heart started to sway a bit. Who was this sudden? Who could smile? Ah! Smile. He even gripped her small chin with a rather stern expression. Chapter 902. Arbor's large round eyes looked at him, showing a bit of her little white teeth. You didn't smile. Emolien moved closer to her face, using his warm face to rub against her little face. You have to smile at me like a spring breeze. He was still brooding over that guy Lightning's description. Arbor thought he was a bit funny, reaching out to grab a strand of his hair. What did Lightning say to you? He said you smiled very warmly at Marquis of Sue Anne's family's old fifth. And the key point was that he was stunned. Damn, just thinking about it made him angry. He wasn't there at the time, but he was there to dig out Marquis of Sue Anne's family's old fifth's eyeballs. I really didn't smile. Arbor herself didn't remember smiling at that guy. If she did, it was most likely a cold smile. You did smile. He emphasized, hugging her so close that his face was close to hers. As soon as he lowered his head, he could open his mouth and bite her little mouth. Hurry up and smile, or else I'll punish you. Arbor only felt that when this man was childish, he was like a little child asking for candy. That pair of curved phoenix eyes contained a trace of soft grievance, practically melting her heart. You scoundrel. Arbor couldn't help but giggle, subconsciously biting her little mouth, using all her strength to push away his boiling hot body. Hurry and go away. You're about to burn up. I won't go. He hugged her, using all his strength to rub against her body. Smile again. Smile all day long, I'm not an idiot. Arbor was anxious and angry, using a bit more strength to pull on his hair. Hurry and let go. Otherwise I'll pour water on you. I won't let go even if you pour water on me. When a certain person pestered her to the point of being a scoundrel, he was absolutely invincible. Arbor couldn't help but giggle, a sweet smile appearing on her little face. She reached out to poke his shoulder. I'm done laughing, hurry and let go. Seeing that he didn't have any reaction for a long time, he hugged her and stared at her little face without blinking. Arbor was embarrassed to be stared at like that. He hurriedly covered his phoenix eyes that were as deep as the starry night sky. Why do you keep looking at me? Jojo, you're so beautiful. When I look at you, I feel like my heart is no longer with me. Yes, it looked like it was about to fly. Just let me take a few more glances at you. You can't lose a piece of meat. Bah. Arbor turned his face away, puffing out his cheeks and pretending not to look at him. In fact, her heart was beating very fast. She felt that if she was too close to him, he would most likely eavesdrop on her heartbeat and laugh at her. Out of the corner of her eye, she couldn't help but sneak a peek at him. Her sneaky little appearance made Emolien's heart soften and she couldn't help but laugh. Emolien hugged her and rubbed her up and down. Her voice was low and misty as she mumbled, "What should we do, Jojo? You still have 2 months before your hairpin ceremony." Sigh. He was so anxious waiting. Xiao Mu's small face turned even redder, and she thumped his back with a moderate amount of force. Suddenly, he felt the carriage shake slightly, as if it was slowly coming to a stop. Arbor tugged on his long hair and whispered anxiously, "We're here. Hurry and let go." Emolien reluctantly let go of his embrace. Arbor broke away from his embrace with a whoosh, lifted the curtain, and jumped out. The cold wind outside blew, and the heat on her face faded a little. But her heart was beating like a drum, and only she could hear it. It's still 4:00. It's probably going to be 12:00. Don't wait for me. Chapter 903. Arbor reached out to cover her face. When she turned back to see him following her with a smile, she couldn't help but glare at him. This person had a strange charm all over him, like a magnet that always attracted other people's eyes. He was especially annoying. Emolien didn't care that the little fellow was scowling at him. He was secretly amused as he reached out to take her little hand and pulled her towards the Supreme Court's entrance. We've been to the Supreme Court's prison twice already. I'm familiar with the place, so I won't go down with you, okay? Arbor nodded, using her eyes to indicate for him to let go. You're not going down with me, so why do you keep holding my hand? You're obstructing other people's movements. Mo Lien looked at her innocently. I'll send you to the entrance. The Supreme Court's Vice-Chancellor had already heard the news and ran out to receive them. It was the nearly 40-year-old official that they saw last time. Beside him was a naturally supercilious official. When he saw the Crown Prince and Crown Princess, he also came over to greet them with a smile. Mo Lien said in a low voice, "This is official Gu." Mo Lien secretly gave Arbor a look, and transmitted a voice into her ear. He's the one who barged into Second Imperial Brothers Fu to capture Ding Ting Ding. Arbor was enlightened. She glanced at official Gu, but didn't say much to him. She followed the Supreme Court's Vice-Chancellor to the prison. Along the way, the Supreme Court's Vice-Chancellor politely exchanged greetings with Arbor. The capital's Chao family are all locked up in the prison in the north. Chao Dongbua and the others are all locked up separately. I don't know which one the Crown Princess wants to see. I don't want to see Chao Dongbua. Arbor pursed her lips. Take me to the prison cells where the Chao family's commoners are locked up. Yes. The Supreme Court's Vice-Chancellor called over a jailer to lead the way, and he brought Arbor to the largest prison cells in the north. There were 40 to 50 people locked up in each cell. It was a dark mass as far as the eye could see. Seeing that someone was coming over, those people were like dying quails. They couldn't help but cry out, "Let me out," one after another. Scram, scram, scram. The jailer swung his whip and flung back the hands that had broken out of the wooden cell. Arbor passed by and searched for sixth Uncle Chao's family of 3 in the cell. All of a sudden, a person pushed his way to the front of the wooden cage and slammed his head into the cage. He clung onto the wooden pillar and shouted at her, "Arbor! How dare you come to Arbor? You bitch, you caused us to be in this state, and you still dare to come and see us? You black-hearted, venomous woman, why don't you just die?" A whip struck her hand, and in return, she let out a wail of pain. Arbor turned his head and looked at Joni coldly, a mocking smile on his face. Miss Chao definitely didn't know that she would live such a miserable life. Arbor tossed her howls and clamors to the back of his mind and strolled past her. He found sixth Uncle Chao's family of 3 in the third large prison cell. Chao Mu beckoned at the jailer, having him open the cell door. Instantly, many people attempted to charge out. When the jailer saw this, he effortlessly lashed them back with a few whips. "All of you, behave yourselves. You will be exiled to the northwestern desert tomorrow. There's no need to be so anxious. There will always be a chance to let you out." The jailer's gloating words elicited howls and screams from the Chao family. They had been living and working in peace and contentment in the Mo Kingdom capital these past few years, and they were used to living like princes. How could they possibly adapt to the bitter cold of the northwestern desert? You're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.